All right, so I've selected it and started streaming. Let's see if anything happens. All right, well, it's got stuff metrics on here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I see. Oh, here we go. Actually, we are live now.
Oh my God, are we?
Yeah, we are.
I don't see it on my end either.
It's coming up. It's coming up. All right, everybody who's here. Oh my good lord, I'm gonna claw my eyes out. Okay, I want a Wendigo to jump through my chimney and kill me. Google servers are down today, as apparently because we tried to do this through StreamYards. So then I went through OBS Studio. I now have Alex Cosma here on Google Meet. I think you can hear him. Cosma, say something and see if they can hear you.
Yeah, I'm here. Is it still working?
We're building this thing as we fly. And I never like to pay attention to the feed because it's a few seconds delayed and that messes with my head. It's like listening to music. It's like trying to play with music that you got to like a slight, delay with, and it makes you crazy. All right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the setup is insane. The setup was I'm using OBS Studio. I am showing my desktop. So what you're seeing right now is actually my desktop. On my desktop, I have half of the video. Well, I have Cosma, right? So that's just what my desktop is a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, and it's a complete hack, and it seems to be working. So we'll just proceed. All right, sounds good.
It's getting even better now. My desktop is starting to die.
What's it doing?
It's just going all non-responsive. Bunch of apps aren't working. Like, I'm just gonna not touch it.
Yeah, don't touch anything. That's where. All right, guys, if you're here, welcome to being here. If you're here later, you get to laugh. The tragedy plus time will be comedy. I assure you. All right, today we're going to talk about what the hell are we talking about? We're talking about Americanism. That's right. You know why Americanism is so different from liberalism and conservatism? Because we keep trying to use these antiquated words. It's like trying to wear our grandfather's clothes. And frankly, as the I think it's the Soviets or is it the Chinese that observed when fighting in, I guess it would be the Chinese because of the Korean War, is that fighting Americans is almost impossible because even if you learn their doctrine, they're not going to follow their own doctrine. We're just going to make stuff up. That's what Americans do. So we have kludged together this Franken philosophy from conservatism and liberalism, and we've just taken what we want. So any conversation that has anything to do with conservatism and liberalism, you're going to be at least half wrong. And I don't like to just include one side of the political aisle for America either. I think actually there's more similarities and differences. It's just that certain things tend to speak to everybody, right? So notice that like equity, like speaking of equity and stuff like that on the left, it's actually an appeal towards having an equal chance at a bright future. It's actually just it's a negotiation over the barrier to entry to the meritocracy. They're not actually, well, they're effectively attacking the meritocracy, but they're doing this sleight of hand by appealing to our desire for meritocracy. It's a way of just tricking Americans. And most of these people are not political operators. They're just useful idiots, right? So they're being tricked into thinking they're fighting for a meritocracy when they're actually fighting for the opposite. Right. But they still have to appeal to that American desire for meritocracy, and social mobility. So I'm going to pull up the Google document because I have it up. I'm not going to show it. We're just going to talk about it. I mean, I guess I could cover your face. I saw you had some comments on it. I did not get time to review it. I was just trying to fix this technical mess in the lead up. So what do you think about the methodology? All right. So I have this thing called the methodology, right? So I'll give the quick intros. The methodology that I use to decide what is the revealed preference of Americans, right? Because the only thing that matters is revealed preference. People can read all the books they want. They can fill out all the polls they want. They can tell you what they believe. It doesn't matter. None of that actually matters at all. What matters is revealed preferences. If you're going to try and sell Gillette razors, it doesn't matter the kind of commercials or demographics or surveys or focus groups. At the end of the day, you're selling razors. And if the razors don't sell, then the customer has voted. So I've got a few different ways of measuring, or at least talking about revealed preferences. That's through votes, purchases, and viewership. So I'll pull up this graphics over your face really quick. Whoop. Yeah, so this came out of Media Matters a while ago. This was viewership shares. Oh, Google, you're terribly optimized for this stuff. Oh my gosh. High-tech companies are not high-tech. They're just awful.
No.
They just try to make flashy stuff. Anyways, so you can't see this right now, but I'm putting the bubble diagram that's from Media Matters that shows Joe Rogan at 39.9 million viewers, right? And you'll see like Theo Vaughn at 22.3. The largest leftist they put on there was Trevor Noah at 21.2. And then I'll take the graphics off so they can see a pretty face. That's kind of what I mean by revealed preference through viewership. Like who's popular. So I don't give a rat's patoot about Charlie Kirk or what he thinks. I mean, he matters, sure, but Joe Rogan matters way more. Joe Rogan and Nerdrotic matter way more to me. When I'm trying to figure out what does the common American think, I think if you can't convince Joe Rogan and Nerdrotic about this stuff, you're probably not going to be able to convince the average American or like the propensities of it. Yeah, what's your feeling?
Yeah, there's the difference in revealed preference is very important. And you know, when it comes to knowledge, beliefs, and you know, explicit preferences or ideas, a lot of these things, like most people don't have, I mean, in fact, I would say no person has in their head a completely reconciled, unified way of looking at the world. It just doesn't happen. Knowledge develops in specific domains. It's domain delimited. And how you run your ordinary day-to-day life is one of those domains that may be completely different from your politics. I mean, you know, think of like socialist millionaires and stuff like that. You know, further, there are modules beyond this, like economics, religion. Economics and religion do not share the same core axioms.
Right. They don't compete for space, right?
Yeah. And as you move between domains, you'll see people behaving in different ways or thinking in different ways in different domains. This applies to their politics as well. And I think actually the largest view share being Joe Rogan is kind of important because Joe Rogan is wildly cross-domain in what he covers. You know, the organization of society and the just organization of society is a part of it, but it's not even the lion's share, you know?
Yeah, most people don't really know what they believe. All right, so I have actually a theory of mind of most people is that they don't actually know what they believe until they have to make a choice, right? I forget who I was talking about this to. It might have been my wife. I pretty much podcast all day to my wife all the time. Like this is the mode I'm in when I'm just having a.
Do you call her chat?
Call her chat. It's chat. Wow, chat. What do you think of this? Yeah, what do you think of this, chat? I should start calling her that. My wife is the chat. Wow, chat is mad. The chat is wow. Anyways, the chat's calling me out. Yeah, so all right, so I have this theory of mine that people have to have a crisis of faith before they actually have any faith, and that doesn't matter what they believe in, right? For a young person, or especially a young lady, it might be a boy that she likes. Like, okay, is my aesthetic, is my lifestyle actually something that I care about now that I'm attracted to somebody? Maybe it's a girl that you like. Same difference, right? It might be a life event, like your parents have died. That could be a big deal, and it could cause a major crisis of faith. It could be going to war. It could be being exposed to death. For me, it was being really close to death. Like I was around quite more death than most people are. I think I've seen a couple of dead bodies in person, and I've seen a couple dying people in person. I've never seen anybody die. I never just watched that, but I have seen a lot of corpses. And my travels to Indonesia, and also just being part of large families, like being the boyfriend of a large family and seeing how a different culture's large family works. Like I was with a very traditional Danish family, and the grandmother died. Her name was Yuda. And it was pretty much a wake, which, by the way, a Danish wake is awesome because it's sad because, you know, for a few reasons, but it's awesome for a few others because the pastries are amazing. The coffee is amazing. Everyone's being really kind to each other, and they're sort of normalizing this very inevitable part of life, right? So you don't feel like, because if you don't normalize death, you're going to come to it alone. You're going to feel isolated. You're going to feel like no one's ever experienced this before. Like it'd be like the first time you ever saw someone cry, or the first time you saw, or the first time you ever owed a bill, or just like it. We take
as an infant, the first time you saw yourself bleed.
Yeah, exactly. And all you get are people saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and "I apologize for this." It was very affirming of life. I also went on a big motorcycle road trip where I had a lot of like crazy stuff happen, and there was a lot of affirming to do. But most people don't go through a lot of trials and tribulations, so I kind of feel like we're a nation that doesn't really know what it believes in, mostly, and so one crisis is the most controversial thing ever, or at least it was. Now we're having lots of like miniature crises, which is healthy, right? But people,
Returning to
yeah, yeah,
something I sort of threw out there, but there are loads of little like, the theme keeps reemerging, that to a certain extent war is the health of the state, in that you can have a nationwide event that forces the nation to realize what it believes. And I think in the cultural movements of the 20th century, you saw the gradual spending of the force that came out of the Second World War, um giving way to a much less committed in reality, like boomer culture,
oh
just as an
yeah,
example.
exactly. And it's not even necessarily war, because I always push back. It's a very Eurocentric thing to think that like war is we got to always have a war. It almost makes it sound like Aztecs, but like you just need a struggle. Like
Yeah.
for the Egyptians, it was the pyramids, always bigger and better pyramids. You could have a society that was entirely based on space travel, probably, where it's like we need to
Hmm.
do bigger and better space travel. We need more moon bases. Just some sort of struggle that forces you to actually get up out of bed and put your back to something, right? Uh,
Yeah, and reality testing what you believe versus what you actually believe.
Yeah, it's really hard to put in like the 12 hours a day at a company like SpaceX if you don't actually believe in what they're doing. So
Hmm.
when I was talking to the recruiters when I was in university, and by the way, a whole bunch of my friends went to go work at SpaceX, and they were really just sussing out whether or not you were a diehard Elon fan, because that was pretty much what you had to. It was a cult of personality, because it has to be to accomplish that much. It has to be a little unhinged. Um,
Hmm.
I don't ever want like a fully sane and rational society, because it's going to lose all of its artistic merit and all of its struggle. But I digress. I'm getting off the topic. Let me go back to the list here, just make sure I'm staying on here. Yeah, the other revealed preferences are for viewerships. Viewerships, purchases, and votes. Right. Um, no, the votes were pretty decisive. I hope it's a wake up call for everybody, whether you're on our side or not. And I don't really have a side. I don't really give. I'm on the side that's making the most sense at the time. I'm very much about not
Hmm.
about utopia, just about making some progress towards something sane. But uh, purchases is an interesting one, because that does bring up one of the aspects of this culture, which is the dying video game and Hollywood industries, which I think you probably have some insight into. Um, what what are Americans revealing to us about their preferences regarding that?
Oh man. Wait. So the purchasing thing, especially when it comes to entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
is actually more like politics than the general marketplace. Um,
Hmm.
because the general
Well, it's a
marketplace,
luxury,
like
yeah.
there's loads. It's a luxury, and there's just like loads and loads and loads of things on offer. And preferences can flee across domains and patterns of consumption and so on and so forth. If you're looking just inside of entertainment, like we're locked in looking at that. Um, Entertainment tends to be like fairly high cost to produce endeavors, at least in terms of
Yes.
things like movies and video games. um sort of like politicians, and it's not really a matter of what would you like in a way where you can broadly express your preferences on the market. It is much more narrowly, what do you like of what's on offer. And
Mm.
in things like Hollywood, um what's on offer sucks, but nobody has the capital or interest to really take a crack at displacing the incumbents.
Yeah.
Or the poor performance of the incumbents is like signal to investors like, we're it may not be worth our while to take a swipe at them.
Right.
um
Right.
similar with video games. And I think if you actually look at leakage, because people still have demand for entertainment, like streaming services are flagging, and there's confounding variables like proliferation of streaming services. But I think you know people go to things like YouTube or Instagram or TikTok that have significantly lower production costs to get off the ground, and actually enable a lot of consumers to get more of what they want. Or podcasting, which goes back to this graph here.
Yeah, yeah. The low barrier to entry has actually created a massive amount of competition between Hollywood and normal people.
Mhm.
I think that, and this is a thought that most conservatives will not acknowledge, that social media has done far more good than it has done harm. Because the revealed preference I'm getting here from the Hollywood and video game fallout is people do not like being preached to. They don't like being told what to think. And podcasts don't have the authority to tell you what to think. Like, if I sat here and told the viewer what to think, they'd just leave, right? There's a million channels out there that are like that. My biggest issue is with like the red pill channels that tell you fatalistically what's going to happen based on statistics of averages. I'm like, that's not actually how things go. I mean, if we went by averages, no one would be excellent. This is not a world of averages. It's a world of smattering. The average is just a way of putting a single number on a very complicated thing. And that single number used to be, right? The single numbers used to be the broadcast. And everyone wanted to be average. Like, as you mentioned, the boomers, they didn't challenge a lot because they didn't have a lot to challenge with. There was not a lot of competing narratives, right? Walter Cronkite was credited with pretty much ending U.S. effort in Vietnam by demoralizing Americans by saying the Tet Offensive was a big success. To the Vietnamese, the Tet Offensive was like a Hail Mary. They were almost ready to surrender, according to some. This like single average way of thinking of things. What is the average American? I hate saying that, but there's no better way. Typical American's probably better. That more appeals to the mode rather than the mean. But these conflicting narratives are the new Americanism. Like the podcasters, people like it when people on the same side beef together. Actually, like if we called out other YouTubers, it'd probably get us more attention.
I thought that's what you were doing with the Quebecois streamer voice.
Oh, did I do a Quebecois streamer voice? What? Oh my gosh!
Oh, I thought you were specifically like trying to sound like XQC or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, I was. He lives to be made. He likes it. He loves it.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's right. That's right. He's so mad about taxes. He's going to be conservative. He's going to be set. Anyways, the conflict. So Americans, through their revealed preference, seem to enjoy a level of respectful conflict, right? Like I made a tweet earlier today where I was describing that on the right, there is actually a pretty big diversity of thought. And that diversity of thought is fueled by the fact that we could disagree with Donald Trump vehemently. Like he's saying that he wants some level of leniency towards illegal workers who are working farms and hospitality, right? Now, where's that coming from? That's going to be fodder for the influencers to speculate on, right? They're going to speculate that some lobbyists, they always do, or speculate some hidden influence. My suspicion is I give Trump usually the benefit of the doubt because stuff is complicated. He's probably just not wanting our agricultural industry to fall apart quite so fast. You know, if you suck something out, sometimes you have to pump something back in, and we haven't pumped the domestic workers back in yet. So I don't know. Would I have done it that way if I was president? Hell no. But that's up for debate, right? So, and I said in this tweet that, you know, dear leftists, you see how the right can vehemently disagree and not like try to call for assassination says, right? We don't have to call for cancellations. We're not trying to like get him to be impeached. We're not trying to go for his head. We're just disagreeing, and we're not trying to destroy the guy. That's how we keep a diversity of thought, by not destroying each other when we disagree on things, which is how almost the entire left fell apart. Yeah.
This is kind of why Blue Sky is falling apart.
Yeah, Blue Sky. Yeah, nobody likes being a liberal sucks right now. Being an American liberal sucks right now.
It's like this is a hard thing to explain about the nature of reality, because the human mind generally quite likes symmetry, visually, aesthetically, but also like in terms of cognitive models, most people prefer symmetrical, symmetrical distributions, symmetrical models. A lot of our, important aphorisms have elements of symmetry
Well,
to them,
reciprocity
or
reciprocity is the core of like the Western moralistic mindset. In fact,
yeah,
it's the core of every human moralistic mindset,
yep.
and that means equal.
The fact of the matter is, reality itself is very rarely symmetrical.
That's correct.
And if you don't but your mental models are symmetrical, so you're geared up for some dissonance when this comes into the politics space. you know like yeah, the right can be a problem, and are there elements on the right that pose a significant political threat? Yeah, there are. And there are elements on the left that pose a significant political threat. Okay, so the automatic assumption is they're equal or it's symmetrical. It's like,
Right,
nah,
right.
they're not. The one on the left is like purity spiraled, heavily radicalized, and like nutso butso,
Yeah,
and
like
and
you're not allowed
wildly,
to have
wildly
opinions.
dangerous.
Like I'm allowed
Yeah.
to have crazy opinions on the right. I could believe in UBI. I'll just be called silly, and they'll laugh
Hmm.
at me. But they're not going to like kick me out of the party. I mean, we've
Right.
tolerated libertarians for a very long time, and only now when they're actually betraying the United. And I'll be a little bit dramatic, but kind of sort of not. They're actually kind of betraying us because they're trying to cut the spending cuts. Right, the $9.5 billion spending cut. Thomas Massey voted against it, and Rand Paul and Massey, who are they're the spokespeople of libertarians because the Libertarian Party is not competent enough to field a representative that they feel represents them enough. Maybe I should say instead of competent, cohesive. But to me, that's the same thing when it comes to politics. If you're not cohesive enough to make a compromise, which libertarians hate compromising, they're the same thing as the leftists. They say the same thing as the liberals, where it's like you make one compromise, and it's like you're not a real libertarian. That's the thing.
Right.
Anyways,
Yeah.
the actual we actually had to wait for a proper sense of betrayal. Yeah, sorry, I'll finish up real quick. We had to wait for a proper sense of betrayal before we actually went after them. And we tolerated their nonsense
Right.
for this long.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a radical ideology, just the same.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite as venomous, but certainly like focused on purity spirals and like it's an ideology. It is focused on ideals and rationalistic constructs over what one can learn from the real world, and this is like most crushing for libertarians, what you can do in the real world that is just an improvement over the current state of affairs versus no, it must be all or nothing paradise.
Yes,
And
it's
it's like,
the utopianism, right?
right, yeah.
Like for,
The existence of civilization and technology itself is proof that gradualism works.
yes, I'm absolutely a gradualist, and that's why these perfectionists who say like, well, you have to have these tenets, like you have to have these purity checks to join up, right? It doesn't work that way. Like for let's say take Joe Rogan yet again. Not every conservative that went on there, like take Matt Walsh, conservative that went on there and tried to like lecture him, got BTFO'd pretty hard because Joe's not going to put up with that because Joe's got a fairly well thought out mind of who he is. Like he's more or less a thinker for a living, God help us. But he's got his money and he has all day to sort of think about these things and tons of people to voice things off of. He's almost a man who was built as an amalgamation of everyone he's talked to on his show. Who's left an impression? Like he's the mimetic. He's like the mimetic flower, right? He's the mimetic lotus. All these bees are coming in with all the different pollen, and they get to compete over which genome gets to take over in the flower that is Joe Rogan. he's like a zucchini flower because he's Italian. But my point is that you're able to win that. So the way that the right functions right now is that if you can make a convincing argument, you can come out of left field. Ironically, yes, sometimes it is a left field they come out of. If you can make a convincing argument, you have a place to stand, and it can start to take hold. There's a lot of people who had convincing arguments that were not convincing a year ago, but now things have changed, events have changed, and the credibility is just going up and down and up and down, and it's entirely a revealed preference credibility. And frankly, if you don't have the backing of people and money, if you don't have the backing of the popular money and the popular viewership, you're essentially powerless now, right?
Hmm.
All questions of philosophy don't matter at that point. It's like who you can the raw politic is who you can convince, and I think America is transcending the idea of any utopianism. So when Carl Benjamin has his whole his rebuttal against liberalism, Americans are like, okay, we don't care. I didn't believe in that.
Yeah. Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, there's I think it's interesting because you've been floating this idea to me for some time that well, I mean, one way of couching it is that the British aren't liberal, but here it seems to be that Americans aren't really liberal either,
Well,
which I
what is a
think
liberal
is,
though? It's like what is a
yeah.
liberal? Have Matt Walsh ask that, because the thing is, when you have a utopian mindset, you can never coalesce onto an ideology. It's an ideology is individuated to each person who believes in it if it's utopian. That's why the libertarians and the liberals are very similar. Like if I ask I think it was Will Stansel who was asking on Twitter of like, we need to really stand up for what we believe in and get back to the message, and someone just replied, what, that girls can be boys, or that girls can be pregnant, or sorry, boys can be pregnant. And it's like, yeah, you're going to make this new moral framework or this new moral rule that fits your utopia. And the liberal utopia is there is a place of zero distinction between people.
Yes. Yeah, it's zero distinction, and like it sounds like it's social, which it is partly. It is actually, like, if you dig into it all the way, it is actually metaphysical.
Yes.
It is a war on on distinction on the level of being itself. This is why things like Marxism has, at the end state of communism, is a transfiguration of the nature of reality. Like,
He thinks we're going to get to
it's,
utopia or some sort of transcendent place. Like if we
yeah.
could just have this thing, and the problem is that justifies any philosophy that does that, um, justifies whatever it has to do to get there. Uh,
Yeah.
Whereas, what'd you call it? Not progressivism. That's not the right word. Incrementalism. Whereas
Mm.
incrementalism is weighing the pros and cons of every single step along the way. It's the difference between I always thought about how crazy it would be to design an animal, right, from scratch. When I was a little kid and I was thinking about like watching Jurassic Park, I was like, could a person design an organism? And I realized you'd have to design it in every stage, from just genes and like zygotes, all the way to the egg, all the way to a hatchling, all the way through adolescence, through sexual reproductive system, and all these transformations. Every single step along the way has to work. It has
Hmm.
all of these different functions. And not only does it have to work, it actually has to be better than everything else that's trying to compete with it. Like that is a really hard system, and it's strangely, it's the most rigid set of requirements that you have, but that's the only thing that works.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and you get there adaptively, not in a top down manner. It's interesting on the note of evolution. I think somebody that you can see the dynamics we're talking about here at work really clearly is Brett Weinstein.
oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and like over the last decade or so, a lot of public intellectuals have heaped shame and glory on themselves in like various
Oh yeah,
degrees. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't think anybody's come out of the past decade looking as good as Brett Weinstein has in, like, the relative ratio of filth to success sort of thing.
He's
And
done really well, and
you know
I'd love to I wonder, what do you think is core to that? Like how do you think he made it through?
well, there's, boy. So you look at his, evergreen experience. One of the things I observe about Brett Weinstein is, like what I was talking about earlier, where politics and, your other conscious avowed ideas may be inhabiting different neighborhoods and don't necessarily have to cross over a lot. But if you're committed, like if you have a firm commitment to truth and integrity, in terms of what you say and how you comport yourself, when you encounter discrepancies, you resolve them, and you look to resolve them in accordance with reality. um
Right.
and Brett went through like, the evergreen stuff tested a lot of his beliefs about politics. And then, COVID was just a big old adventure where it confronted a lot of his beliefs about scientific consensus, evidence, and how to
Mm.
handle like things coming at you politically, evaluating varying truth claims, evaluating authority, and so on and so forth. And he seemed to be just really clearly committed to, like, you know what, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And he advanced a lot of things over that time that turned out to be wrong. And he owned his mistakes very, very quickly and was like
Yeah,
very
yeah.
careful to attenuate himself to what the truth seemed to be, and carefully scrutinizing truth. And it's interesting because he doesn't seem to have any shame about it. Like, it's enabled him to like move completely over the aisle while being consistent and not betraying like personal principles. And I don't think he had like, like COVID was probably a big one, but I don't think there was a consolidated road to Damascus moment. It more just looks like somebody who's relentless about like comporting themselves honestly in the public space.
Yeah, authenticity is the new currency right now. And that's why so many people have crashed out, is because they're not willing to admit mistakes. Like they have their own version of reality, and they put blinders on themselves, right?
Hmm.
And everyone takes time to admit that they're wrong sometimes, but the faster you do it, and honestly, the less you impose righteousness in the first place, the easier it is to make it in this world. I bet you Brett
Hmm.
Weinstein was probably, and this is how science is supposed to work: is that you're supposed to advance things as a hypothesis. It is a question. It is at most it's a theory, right? And then there's a hypothesis built in that theory that will make or break the theory. But you're not supposed to actually ever get attached to the ideas that much. I know
Yeah.
that almost never happens, even back in the old science days, right? But it wasn't always an ideal, and I hold to that ideal: is that you're not supposed to be attached uh, to the results. And as you were saying, like with COVID, with all these different things that have happened, there have been so many evolutionary hurdles that have had to be jumped, right? It's like the short necked tortoises versus the long necked tortoises on the Galapagos Island. Um, there was a big flood, and all the short necked tortoises died out. We've had a
Hmm.
lot of floods. We've had and with progress moving this fast, 10 years happening in the space of 1 year. We're going to see so many extinction level events that people are just getting. People are getting one shotted every other week, who are on one side
Yeah.
or the other. The
Yeah.
the guys, the Babylon Bee, were the heroes last year, and now they're getting dragged really hard. What's the new flood?
The I mean, I think I might have gotten this saying from Brett Weinstein, but ideas die so that we don't have to.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, it's important. That's the unattachment to your hypothesis. If it doesn't match reality, throw it away. It's not useful. Um, you uh and there are some things that you can interrogate where, like, there's measurement errors on the margins, or something is happening that is not what it seems in the general pattern. But by and large, you let reality be the decider, and your mindset should be about interrogating relentlessly, does this comport with reality? um
Yeah.
uh there's so ideas die so that we don't have to. This includes, and I think this is the biggest source of crash out, both on highly visible public level and on private everyday level, is ideas die so that we don't have to include self concept.
What do you
um
mean by that?
your conception of yourself, like the I'm a good person kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
Like, a
you might
lot
have
of,
to.
for
Yeah,
example, like most soft liberals in the United States are wedded to their political position because it's fused to the self concept of good person. Giving
yeah,
this up means giving up being good person. People who don't agree with them, therefore, must not have good person attached. But they fused in a personal self concept there. And just like you got to be unattached to a given hypothesis, you know, you've also got to be unattached to seeing yourself in a particular way. And like
Mm-hmm.
again, just mundane examples. Um, somebody may have this like good person thing, or like, like oh, put to death everyone who beats animals or something like that. And
Right,
then
right.
they
Yeah,
like
exactly.
own
Yeah.
they own their first dog or something like that and learn like, oh, I don't have like the personality for this. And I, like struck my dog and they're constantly frustrating me and stuff like that is
Right.
like, but the solution then in order to preserve this self-concept is get rid of the dog. And like the fact of the matter is like your self-concept is what's like messing you up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the other things that people tend to have a self concept of is sharing. Honestly, like when you're a child, is that your toy or is sharing good? And both of those things cannot be true, right? If the other kid wants your toy, and that just extrapolates and extrapolates and extrapolates of like what is public good versus personal property, and that's a debate that
Mhm.
keeps having to happen. And all right, the fact that I'm gonna give is that the liberals and the leftists are going to go extinct 100% because they just cannot have the discussions. Like there's a
Mhm.
path for redemption for a lot of people. If they there was even a people are even like laying out a path of redemption for Elon like that day. It's like if he goes to rehab and he apologizes and he disappears for a little while and maybe he doesn't, get too political for a little bit, he'd be fine. He'd be back in our good graces. Whereas the other
Mhm.
side was burning his cars down and wanting him dead. I was like, that's not a no one's gonna stay there. No one can ever stay there. Like if you say the wrong thing, you won't be invited back to the parties. You'll lose your social, and problem is the self concept is actually a social construct too. Like
Yes.
so if the social group that you're in is highly politically charged, and you say the wrong thing, your concept of you're going to have a self crisis, which is why the mental health. One of the factors of why the mental health is not symmetrical. Like the mental health issues are not symmetrical across political aisles.
Mhm. Yeah.
I am not walking on eggshells. I'm actually allowed to just blow a V8 and say whatever I want. That's also why it's easier for a right winger to have a podcast.
Yeah. You know, something that's interesting because I think you're right in that, especially with things like US aid money drying up, and like honestly, there probably needs to be some very targeted takedowns and investigations of
I think there will
NGOs.
be. I think there will be.
Um, like imagine being a leftist for free. What a wild idea.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
so the ideology is this weird Gnostic mess. Like the underlying psychology of it hates reality and is
Right.
attempting to destroy it. Like that's not a
Mm,
viable
no.
philosophy.
Yeah.
Or at least it's not self-sustaining. But the psychology that motivates it is unfortunately always going to be with the human race. I think the political coalition that that is the American left doesn't really have a future, and they may reform, with some elements out of it. It's been interesting for me, by the way, like just as an item of speculation, like at what point did the American left become full on nutso butso? Like when did the serious like good faith disagreements about the good for America go away?
I know.
I
Well,
reckon it's probably in the late 60s, early 70s.
yeah, and the thing is, I'm actually not that interested in what the leftists think anymore because I think we've got a handle on that. I'm not really interested
Yeah.
in their
Yeah,
philosophy
yeah.
because it's dying. And like, but what we're seeing is the reaction to so what I call the American right or the conservatives, what we call now, conservatives are actually kind of just an evolution of classical liberals, more or less,
Mhm.
from the founding only, like the American school of classical liberalism. Declaration of Independence, Constitution, all that stuff. Cicero's form of government is how we form our government. We have a little bit of Christianity in there, but I was actually thinking earlier today that most of the laws that we have are actually about keeping order at the
Yeah.
certain like criminal level, and then everything else is ordinances. So like certain acts which are completely normal are outlawed in Maryland. Now they're never going to catch you doing those acts because they're stuff that you're doing only in your bedroom, actually.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
it's a
Maryland has some of those silly like
yeah.
never X a fish on such and such day kind of thing.
Yeah. So what we have here is the sort of the local laws are more religiously tinted, but everything else is actually towards keeping order. Like I don't,
Mhm. Well,
and the Christian aspect of our government is actually more restraintive than it is, assertive. It doesn't assert itself that much. It's more keeps us from saying that like no, this is the way we're going to run everything. It's like no, we're going to allow people. Also, this union has always balanced on the edge of a knife.
mhm.
So that means you have to compromise. Uh, I was if anyone's ever worried about there being like a monolithic right that becomes tyrannical, there is so much division on the right. It's just that they know how to reconcile their divisions. So it's
Mhm.
the power just keeps shifting, right? Like, so I'm not too worried about that.
You know, there's I think one aspect that the Americans got from the British, which is very, very important to our cultural success, is don't worry about it too much.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that's exactly. We don't follow our doctrine that hard. So
yeah.
that's why it's so fascinating to study because we are it. What we're seeing now is not as a result of some sort of top-down, institutional, researched, well thought out thing. It's just the individual preferences of the human beings that are constitute our country, and
Mhm.
like for for, for them, for the leftists, I find that they're about as untenable as the Groypers types. It's like most people just like find them annoying, and it's not really gaining traction. Most of, because I said like Nerdrotic and Joe Rogan are my bellwethers. It's like you're probably going to get them to do some noticing, but they're not going to. They're not going to feel comfortable about it. They'll tolerate it maybe in some conversations, but they're going to treat everybody as an individual at the end of the day
Yeah.
in their personal life.
Yeah. Well, and depending on how you're noticing, like
Yeah,
there there are a lot of groups like it's kind of like what you were talking about with averages before. In the abstracted world, yeah, there are going to be trends that will show up, but in reality, outliers count for a lot. And if you're at this view of high aggregation, like you're just going to miss a lot of real dynamics. Like people notice stuff about Jews, but it requires omitting sufficient evidence such that their theory holds true. Like
yeah, it doesn't
jewish
stand to
people are
scrutiny. Yeah,
yeah, Jewish people are not a monolith.
no,
And like if look at internal disagreements between different Jewish sects and movements. Look at a large proportion of American Jews being wildly pro-Palestine.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's higgledy piggledy. It's all over there, and now the stuff that they accuse the Israeli state of doing, like having compromat on congressmen and being involved in this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, it sounds like there's a CIA then, because the CIA does way more of that.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah. Anyway, and the thing is, they'll know it's the thing about noticing is it's just confirmation bias, and it's just
yes,
there for influencer clout, and it's like I don't. No one gives them any mind. No one really.
yeah.
Nobody serious actually cares. It's just sort of a vector for victimhood
Well,
and
so
removing your self
yes,
agency. So
yes, it's being done for psychological reasons and salving essentially like a mutilated psyche. Um, you know, there's the don't worry about it of Britain and America is very very important because worrying about it too much is the like pursuing the absolute all the way down
right.
is a risky endeavor, and if you make any mistakes at all, no matter how minor, you will get off course very very quickly.
And that's why,
um
yeah, that's
the,
the utopianism stuff where you try to top down create this whole thing
right.
versus incrementalism where you just start with where you are and then make a
Yeah.
change. Yeah,
Yeah. The scientific method is for physical reality a set of best practices for worrying about it too much. But you will notice it is entirely structured around disconfirmation. There's nothing in the scientific method about confirmation. It's all disconfirmation because this is like a set of best practices to prevent you from fucking up when worrying about it too much.
Yeah, and you really shouldn't. People shouldn't worry about it too much. Uh, it's not something that pure thought can do, because when you're pure thought, you're abstracted away from what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. Anytime you're doing that, and it's really just a thing of humility that you have to not think that you're smart enough to figure all that out. Which is why I actually have an inherent disrespect for, I don't know if I'd call them prescriptive philosophers, who are like, this is the version of the reality that should exist, like the Karl Marx types, or anybody
Mhm.
else who's done something like that, of like, here's the beautiful society, everything would work just great if it was like this. Um,
Yeah.
even Cicero, who designed a pretty, I believe it was Cicero who designed the three branched governments that would combat each other, was doing that based on his experiences in Rome. And the problem is that most of our academics have very little real world experience either, right? You're not going
Mhm.
to see them. They've been in academia their entire existence, and frankly, the academia. Here's another revealed preference, actually, of the Americanisms, of Americanism, is that we don't really care about credentials or institutions at all. It's all about
Mhm.
your credibility is kind of personal, and it's sort of, what have you done for me lately, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's like the people who are insistent on, that you address them as doctor kind of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's just
And
cringe.
like that flies in precisely two circles. Academia, particularly the social, sciences, as it were, where they're desperate for legitimacy. And the other is in some sects of in some sects of Protestant Christianity, where the preacher is always Doctor so
Oh
and so.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
Doctor Martin Luther King or Doctor this. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
the
It's like,
yeah.
nobody
Well,
cares, bro. Just read the Gospels.
yeah, exactly. That's we'll have to do a show on my take on Christianity. It's not really my take. It's actually, well, I'm going to be arrogant and say it's the take, because we were isolated in East Asia, completely away from other Christians, and we just had the book, and then we came over to
Mhm.
America, and there are definitely churches that agree with us 100%. It's like, yeah, if you just read the book, it's pretty clear. Like I
Mhm.
think it was Second Timothy. There's a thing about, we don't have any intermediaries with God, or except Jesus. That's it. Um, there's a lot of stuff out there that crafts how the religion is supposed to work, and it does work. Actually, it keeps you alive when you're surrounded by enemies like Muslims, um,
Mhm.
or Japanese, whichever one my family. It depends on the decade, depends on the adversary, but we always came out on top and doing okay and making lots of friends. We just hope everyone has fun in this crusade.
I'm just gonna pull a pin on a hand grenade and um I- and I'm open to being convinced about this, but in my opinion, like Protestantism is kind of the libertarianism of Christianity. Like,
Well, the thing is, the problem. All right,
okay, that's a nice idea, provided everybody is like 130 IQ and all comes from the same culture.
well, people do have Protestantism is a very large generalization that I hate it when the Catholics make it,
Yes.
because there's only one Protestant church, and that's the Lutherans. He's the
Hmm.
only one that protested. Everyone else is just doing their own thing. I was with the Mormons for a bit, and someone asked, like, "Hey, are we Protestant?" And the guy says, "We're not protesting anything." So no, we're not. We don't care. Uh, it's down to your individual church, and that's the thing is, as a Christian, it's down to you as an individual. It's never meant to be like, you have a church and they're supposed to help you, but no one in the church is made any better than you. And to think so is to lead yourself down to a certain whatever road that person's going to go on. Now there are provisions on being led, but I think the anti-institutionalist nature of the upcoming Americanism is going to mean that there's probably going to be a decoupling from formal churches. This is a prediction. I'm making a prediction. Is that right now the conservatives are having this whole church thing going? I think it's a bunch of BS. I think they're letting in just every snake and or hay, if you want to get my pig
Hmm.
Latin there, to preach, and it's probably going to have a big bubble and then blow up, and it's going to pop real fast because you're going to start having really bad actors. And I would recommend the home church, because at least then it's up to you, and at
Yeah.
least then it's, yeah. So the whole Protestant thing is usually a Catholic derogatory towards everyone that isn't Catholic. Nobody gives a shit about the Catholic Church, really, most of the time. I only really knew what a Catholic was in the last couple of years. I would actually, and I would recommend, by the way, I know you like the Catholic Church to like keep people under control. I think Mormonism is a little bit better. You want to look into that. Give it
No,
a
yeah.
shot.
Wait, I mean, I think you know, if I was to say like, okay, what religions are going to make it another 1,000 years, you know, I would wager Catholicism and Mormonism would be top of my list.
Yeah, if the Catholics could keep Europe,
Yeah,
and they're not, and I don't know if they're gonna. It'll if they lose Europe, it's going to be a huge blow. And sorry, this is off topic. We're off topic. If I had a tie, I'd flip it over my shoulder. We're off topic. If they lose Europe, it's going to be a huge blow to the credibility of the church because all that 1,000-year plus this and cathedral that isn't going to mean damn thing. You're just another religion in America now. And yeah, sure, it's old, but it's also like what has fallen is also a reminder of what you had lost, and then what others have gained is a reminder of what they've gained. Like what if if you've seen some of the Mormon temples, they're massive. They're pretty huge, and they didn't take them 400 years to build it. And they'll probably keep. But my prediction is that the institutionalist way of nature of it is that Christianity is going to be a religion that you more or less keep to yourself. It's kind of, I think, the best case scenario. Anyway, yeah.
Just on institutionalism. Oh, excuse me, I'm a little burpy today.
You're good.
I think this might actually be a bit of a weakness in federal level American culture is like, okay, well, the anti-institutionalists are a little bit ascendant right now. But they're not super well. Yeah, will they stay there? And they're not super great at building new things,
Well, I mean, I guess what I'm saying with the anti-institutionalist is, let me say, instead of anti, I'm going to say pro-individualist. So Elon Musk is a pro-individualist. Joe Rogan's pro-individualist. They're just doing it. Will they build an institution behind them? Joe Rogan, probably not. Elon, yes. It's going to depend. Will that institution degrade when they're gone? Probably, right? If Elon leaves, maybe. Will they have enough momentum to keep them going and keep them on top? Maybe. It's all, Jeff Bezos might poach a lot of their best guys if Elon leaves, right? But the Republican Party right now is in the image of Donald Trump. That is an individual. And I think instead of having the GOP be this formless mass, which is unaccountable, because that's what a formless mass is. Like if you say I have a problem with this church, it's like, okay, who am I going to talk to? But people can just at Donald Trump and criticize him. It'll probably have to be J.D. Vance, which is why I'm thankful. This is why America stuff happens in America. It's because we're sort of a great man factory, a little bit. Whereas in Europe, you're not really encouraged to stick your head up. And
that's a big cultural cultural difference thing is how strong the tall poppy thing seems to be in Europe, which is like, it wasn't always that way, but it sure is now.
Yeah, they're trying to manage decline rather than risk what they have to gain something new, right? To create a new identity. Because if you have 1,000 years of history, like, first off, as an American, I can't fathom that, and none of us actually care. I mean, some of us will go over there like, wow, it's an old building. Well, so that's it. It's an old building. When it comes to our personal preference, we still go back to America and then just do our own thing that we came up with 10 years ago.
It's also like national identities get a little weird. Like I think actually at the size of a lot of what we consider like the sort of preeminent modern nation states, national identities are very, very bizarre. And actually, cultural association or affiliation with them is weaker than people talk about it as being in many cases, unless you have like a quite small country. Whereas regional cultures can be quite strong bonds. The problem is when political decisions are being made for the regional, levels at a larger federated level, it can blow them up and, destroy regional cultures. For instance, when I was living in Rome, There were a lot of migrants there. It's a big tourist city, but it wasn't like overflowing. Um, and there was still a very, very, very strong sense of Romanness. And like you were considered a foreigner as an Italian whose family didn't go back 10 generations inside the municipality of Rome. Um,
Oh
you know,
yeah, yeah,
they have their own little accents and like odd dialect twists and stuff. um and it's really important because like you could do this for like for Siena or Venice or like pick a place in Italy. Italy is one of the fakest countries that exists.
well, I
um
mean, yeah,
there's no such country as Italy up until like the very end of the 19th century, where it's sort of forced into existing from by military conquest from all these little municipalities and
yeah, yeah.
princely states that really want to be themselves. And the country, like large portions of the country want to secede or kick the other half out. Like
Yeah, it's a bit of a shell game over there because I mean I dare say it was a lot of the socialist movements that kind of coalesced these nation states into being, like the socialism of state socialism and fascism, and the
Mhm,
socialism of national socialism. I mean, Germany was a bunch of warring states. Uh,
mhm.
I, I mean I think England might
Hundreds
be
of
one of
countries.
yeah. A lot of those nations are younger than America and with buildings that are older. Anyways, the legitimacy of Europe is a thing to discuss at some other point because it's. I think that they talk about having 1,000-year history, and I'm like, are you the people that built it, and can you still do it? I
Mhm,
don't find history to being a major advantage in your civilization, other than the fact that it helps with attribute to identity. But as we've seen before, like I don't trust a lot of history. Like I don't even trust a lot of the news I hear. Right? Like you see how that
yeah,
gets twisted. Right? It's like why is that?
mhm,
How has that not been happening for most of history? And then you see like in the last century, these sort of socialist rulers creating an entire mythos for their country, an entire national identity out of whole cloth, out of like crazy stuff. Was it like the so-called pagan deities like Odin and all that stuff were made up by like a monk or something? And I have to look that
I
up. Yeah.
I don't know about that one. There's some interesting stuff about the ancient folk religions and stuff. Uh, and how things like the Titans may have been a previous religious system before the prestigious Zeus worshiping
Mm.
peoples came in and conquered and relegated the old gods to the defeated evil giants category.
Yeah, I may be talking
Um,
about my butt about the Norse religions, but like every city state would typically have its own religion, at least in like the ancient Sumeria, Babylon, right?
mhm,
I don't see a reason why that wouldn't continue on into ancient Rome, or the worship of the united worship of all these different deities is actually kind of the united um, symbolic of the United Confederation of these different city states. Like this city state here has Athena, obviously of Athens, right? We're gonna allow a temple
mhm,
of Athena here in this other place, Corinth or something. To
yeah.
show as a good faith relation. It's almost like an ambassadorship as well as a religion, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, yeah, in like, Babylon or somewhere like that, you win a war against somebody and you take their god, the statue that is their god, and you like throw it down in front of Marduk or whatever. The Romans are like, "Oh, yeah, we conquered you. So you can put your gods in our temple and you also get our gods. This is
there we
great
go.
for you guys."
Yeah, yeah. Instead of destroying it, let's just unite. We'll almost marry our gods in under one house. Uh, back
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the
yeah.
yeah, back to the Americanisms. To sort of draw from that sort of god analogy is that people tend to have their own regional gods, and that representation kind of is our federal government a little bit, but it's also uh, a little bit of the some contribution to the American identity, right? Almost,
Mhm,
it's kind of crazy that we have 50 states, and almost every single state does have its own personality, and that people kind of know them. I mean, obviously Delaware
Mhm.
is a black hole of culture. I don't know if anything's there other than the Dover Down slots. But the New Jersey has a personality. A lot of the New England ones don't. Um, I have a controversial opinion about Anglo culture. Is that
Mhm.
a lot of the Anglos think that liberalism is just cultural solvent. I just think that Anglo culture just doesn't win out. When you like you take two eggs and you push them together and see which one cracks. It's going to be Anglos all the time because they don't seem like they're having fun. It doesn't seem like
Well,
it's not a culture of having fun. It's like a culture of deep obligation. And
well,
it's like
compare and contrast though, like, when, because that's sort of a modern read on Anglos. Compare like 19th century back how the Anglos do when you press them together against another egg. Like
well, yeah, sure, but the things
they
have
do
changed, right? Yeah.
outrageously well.
Well, they did. Well, they did outrageously well, and now they no
Mhm.
longer do. I mean,
Mhm.
part of your power is your staying power, right? And like what
Yeah.
happened. And I think that being a Victorian is just not it. Being the Victorian of the 18th century, or was it 19th century, is just not sustainable.
Mhm.
Um, no one's gonna wear those clothes again. That's a lot of work, and the social conditions to make that happen were very external. All right. So I'm gonna maybe talk about something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I think cultures need to be rated against a culture's strength has to be rated against the externalized conditions that keep it together versus the internalized ones, right? Like, all right, let's say that we have a culture where everyone gets along and everyone can trust each other. But also, that really only exists when you can't go two towns over, right? Everybody knows you here in this town. And so
Mhm.
there's a certain population density and there's a certain limit to the population just naturally. And if I drive down the next town, everyone treats me with suspicion and I'm not welcome there. So I have to go back home, right? It's the most opposite of globalism out there. So it's like, yes, you have a high trust society, but only if you're totally trapped there. And not only no one can leave, that's a different question, but like nobody else could come in. That's another example would be like, hey, we're a really fit, slim culture, but it's like it's also because you guys don't have a lot of food. It's
Yeah.
like do you have a
Yeah.
culture of controlling yourself?
Yeah, technology has changed a lot of culture formation and the durability of cultures. I think one of the big factors is actually the plummeting cost of transportation,
Yeah,
in that it is very easy to move. Strong social bonds, A, become less important, and B, become harder to form, because more and more of society is turning into nomads.
well,
And what's
yeah,
interesting is like you have these like the Venetians and the Romans, like the very very deep seated and emotionally important local culture relationships, like or like being a Bostonian, or I forget what the
right.
demonym is for
The
Savannah, Georgia, but those bonds were more important than they are now. And like and it makes belonging to the over tribe more important for maintaining cohesion, but the over tribe is also significantly weaker bonds.
yeah,
It serves well as a subsidiary bond, to keep multiple tribes together. But when you have people's primary cultural interrelationship being based on the over tribe and not being based on the immediate tribe, you start to have social dysfunction. And I mean, people can sense it, that it's a problem. Look at the total dissolution of California. Like, California has a very weak social bond fabric outside of some extremely localist cities like Berkeley, because since the 80s so much of the population has become transients or transplants. California, very weak identity. And COVID happens. We don't have to be in this, real estate abyss. We'll just go
right, yeah.
everywhere else. And like, people reacted to Californians showing up where they were, and it was not good.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you ask anyone about receiving California transplants, it fucking sucks.
The externalization. So when I look at a culture, right, I look at the how what external factors are able to keep them together, right? Or sorry, what external factors are needed to keep them together, and the more of
Mhm.
those factors there are, the weaker that culture is. right? If I could take an Englishman and I put him into a RAV4 and say you can own guns and some land, and he's like, I'm just going to move to America. I was like, okay, there's obviously economic factors though. Does he stay English? Like, because
Hmm.
you could move to America, and by the way, I run into people like this all the time. As a matter of fact, for some weird reason, in my backwoods area of Tennessee, there are like fish and sandwich shops that are run by Englishmen with the Union
Hmm.
Jack. There's a tea room over in the next town over in Cookville, and I ran
Hmm.
into this British dudes at the feed store all the time because all the British dudes are farming. Um, so it's the weird. So they're maintaining some of their British culture. Can you? So when people say like, "Oh, liberalism is a solvent," it's like, no, first off, technology is a huge solvent. Like as you're saying,
Yes.
transportation technology is the solvent. It doesn't matter what philosophy you are if you could move around. And also economics is the solvent. Like it's just a better deal. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you dissolve?
Well, I would say, yeah, yeah, and part of people are like, well, all values, particularly the libertarian position, is like, oh, okay, well, all values are resolved on the market, and it's like, okay, yes, but historically, part of that has been, part of that market clearing process has been saying, okay, these areas are not purchasable, and you have to treat the areas of non-purchasability with some seriousness as like evolutionarily adaptive. um I do still think though that there is something to liberalism breaking down social bonds, albeit indirectly, in that liberalism as a philosophy becomes like deviates from ancient English customs and liberties to thinking about it too much. And like
Oh,
a
I see
lot
what
of
you're saying. Yeah.
liberalism's purpose is negotiating settlement to different groups without them having to compromise their beliefs. It's essentially a like trader's ideology or a nomad's
Oh,
ideology,
yeah, yeah.
because its purpose is allowing otherwise incompatible groups to interface.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly it. I was thinking about this yesterday of how to put it, and it's like what liberalism does. It just allows cultures to compete. Without, and
Yeah,
it removes the social penalties of interaction.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
at the
yeah,
very
yeah.
least.
Yeah, I would
Uh,
say it allows them to both compete and cooperate economically,
yes,
very easily.
and the thing is, America is pretty good at harnessing. Well, up till recently, up until like NAFTA and stuff, fairly good at getting people to cooperate. And even I'll have to do a show about this at some point because I'm not a tech bro, but I'm plugged into Silicon Valley, and the
Mhm.
mindset you get about foreigners is completely different than the mindset about foreigners everywhere else because the foreigners that you get in Silicon Valley are really high quality, and they're basically Americans. They're a little bit nepotistic.
Mhm.
I mean, when people say nepotistic, they really just mean ethnically cohesive.
Yeah.
Like
So
they still prefer their own people, whereas everyone else
yes,
doesn't.
yes. Oh no,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a super big thing with Indians. So most of my professional career was actually in like Silicon Valley and San Francisco. And I could say like it actually still follows the Pareto distribution because, San Francisco is very attractive to lots of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Los Angeles for cute curvy blonde women from Tennessee who can sing a little. Like you're a dime a dozen in that city. It's gonna like chew you
Yeah.
out. Like you're
Yeah.
it's like the concept of a Wisconsin 10 is a New York 6.
Oh
Um
yes. Yeah. Exactly.
yeah,
Well.
there's
Yeah.
there's a similar thing in tech, and you can say like, okay, yeah, well, in Silicon Valley, they do actually have the top human capital, and it's like, if you're outside Silicon Valley, those are the only ones you see because it's a
Correct.
Pareto distribution.
Absolutely.
It's much more all over the map.
No, it's our
Um,
designated economic zone, right? And
yeah.
they
I
and yeah.
interestingly, just there's an intersection. Um, I won't mention his specific name, but I worked at a video streaming company, and we had like the weirdest cross section of like Bay Area people, in that they're basically all transplants, um
Mm.
of varying backgrounds. But one of the guys we had a name that I won't say, but it's like the most Greek name you've ever
That's
heard.
hilarious.
The most Greek name. and it turns out the guy's family is ancient stock American up in like the back country, like Pennsylvania,
Oh yeah.
because like I just got back through David Hackett Fisher's Albion Seed because I wanted to revisit it again.
Sure,
And he
sure.
said something in there that reminded me of this guy, like, oh yeah, there was an anomalous Greek settlement that just moved to Appalachian backcountry. And
Mhm.
like I happened to meet this guy who's like ancient American redneck Greek, stock
It's
in
it
Silicon Valley.
yeah, it's pretty wild. It's uh the limits have been tested, right? I would say that everyone would agree that America had never been more diverse since up till nowish, right? And
Mhm.
I see in the chat there's a talk about authoritarianism versus non-authoritarianism. This is where the thing is starting to recede back because these sort of ideologies are. I consider all of these ideologies of like, oh, are you an authoritarian? Are you a libertarian? Are you this? I'm none of those things. And anybody who's smart, I encourage you not to do those things,
Yeah.
uh, because you should just use what works and then incrementalize, as
Yep.
we've been talking about. Right
Yeah,
now,
labeling yourself is one of those self concepts that you're willing to
mm,
die for that you really shouldn't be.
no, exactly, exactly. Don't put a label on yourself. It's very silly, very silly. Uh, right now, we've hit a limit where the revealed preference of the Americans, the majority of Americans actually, I think it was like 56% now in the latest poll, are like, yeah, we want the mass deportations, and that's probably going to keep going up until it hits a plateau. Usually, if you hit 60% on a poll, that's a lock. That's a super majority in America because there's always like a quarter of people who will always pick a random answer. There's always like a
Yeah.
25%. You could say like
This is the Scott Adams rule, is like on any given question there will be about 25% that's just absolutely wrong.
yeah, absolutely wrong, absolutely. And time will tell, right? And right now, time is kind of told, which is a really good way of like looking at the revealed preferences and looking at what has worked is a good way for me to filter what I do and don't need to listen to. Because now I'm like now in this last year, now that things have changed, right, and things are going to continue to change, and a lot of things are being challenged, I get to now pick who I don't have to listen to, and which points
Mhm.
are just not even up for debate, and I just don't even care. And if somebody on the left side or the liberal side wanted to convince me, they're going to have an uphill battle, and they have to do it nicely because it used to be that they could nag, right? It used to be that
Yeah.
they could just like nag at you and say like, "Don't you care about this?" Don't and like I don't care about anything. I don't have to care about anything.
Right.
The
But
majority of Americans are done caring about anything that you have to say. So be nice
it's
and
also
convince us.
interesting because it's not a real argument tactic. Like there's
No.
not an actual argument there. It's just an indirect self-conception attack. And they're
Right, right.
counting on you having the I'm a good person module
No,
wedded
yeah.
to, some other political position. It's it's just a backdoor exploit. Like it's not a real
Yeah, and
argument. It's not
it's not working.
substance. And like, you know, you as as just a psychological prophylactic, like you do have to just say, I don't have time for this for a lot of things.
Yeah.
But when you get into a discussion with somebody and when you realize they're using like fake arguments, it's like, okay, this isn't entirely warranted. I do not have to pay attention to what you say
No.
because you have no idea what you're saying. You're just using this lizard brain
Yeah, yeah.
psychology heuristic to evaluate things and have no ability to actually recognize truth claims.
Right. And that's what that America's revealed preference right now is we don't care like the for the first time in a while, I have not I mean, the dog that isn't barking, right, from Sherlock Holmes. Evidence that the intruder was someone known to the dog was that the dog wasn't barking during the time of the intrusion. Well, right now, the dog that isn't barking is you don't see a lot of interest in debating leftists anymore. Like,
Mhm,
I don't see anybody giving a damn what Destiny has to say.
mhm,
I don't see it. People are just dunking on Hassan. Nobody actually wants to talk to him.
mhm.
No, like, nobody wants to talk to even Ethan, who is on the left, Ethan Klein on the left, doesn't really want to talk to Hassan that much. They're just going back and forth, shooting past each other in a
Yeah.
YouTube drama war. But that quickly is like boring. Quickly
Well,
became very boring.
part of it is that okay, their arguments don't have merit, but there's also no prestige in it because they were like completely vanquished. Like,
Well, yeah, exactly. Like,
what do you benefit from talking to them?
uh, I mean, and I wonder what the next debate's going to look like. Next, like presidential debate, or, I mean, is it even going to be a debate? I think it's just pretty like one side saying what they believe in, and then people agreeing or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not much to talk about. Honestly, there's the unreconcilable. One side, I mean, the optics of the riots lately. Like, look at the optics. Is they were terrible for the
Mm-hmm.
left, and the left could be stay deluded and think it's great for them, but it doesn't reflect in
Yeah.
the poll numbers, which have been steadily going up. And
Mm-hmm.
that I mean, how many more things are going to sacrifice at the altar in some half baked sacrificial ritual that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work, right? I mean, which another are they going to try another riot? It's like they have a list of things. Are they going to do climate change again? Maybe they'll try climate change again. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do we have to care? You know?
Oh God, I'm looking for the title of the lecture. Just
Yeah.
incidentally,
Don't
this
worry.
is something worth
Yeah. While you're looking, I
unavailable
can bring
videos
it up.
here.
It's no big deal. Yeah. No worries.
Well, I'll just describe it, and I'll try and come up with
Sure.
the title later.
Sure.
Maybe I'll repost this on my Twitter or something. There was an excellent lecture given by Eric Vogelin. I think in the 80s or early 90s. It's something about man of the cosmos. But he looks at diagnosing Gnostic systems like Marxism and stuff like that. And he's like, okay, here's the three principal strengths of this movement. And, one of the crucial strengths he listed is their illiteracy.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yep.
in that specifically being illiterate, being not studied, and being highly resistant to scrutinizing information is actually a massive weapon politically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the next tactic, I think that I believe that a propaganda war actually has three fronts, right? And the three fronts are the enemy camp, the middle camp, or the undecideds, and then your own camp. And your own camp, you're just doing lots of cheerleading, reiterating, and maybe fighting internally to decide what we actually believe in, like stirring the pot to see where
Mhm.
people actually force a decision before we actually have to go up to fight. The middle is all usually logic, reason, appeals to your better natures, or at least appeals to selfishness. Like, hey, your gas prices are going up. We'll fix that sort of thing. The other side is complete demoralization. I think is that's the tactic you use on the enemy camp is just demoralization, not debate, unless the debate is demoralizing, which it usually isn't because they just sort of plug their ears and pretend they don't hear you, or rationalize something the next day. What you do to demoralize is show poll numbers, dunk on them, make fun of them, have more fun than them, having a lot of fun.
Right.
Like I saw Kid Rock doing. I didn't know that guy could spin a disc. Like he did the disc jockey thing. It was really good. It was super. I was like, damn, Mag is just having fun. Have
Yeah.
a lot of fun. Make them feel like they're the ones left out of the party.
Yeah.
And that's the
Well,
tactic.
they don't give a shit about rational arguments,
No,
so you shouldn't try and use them on them. Is that man, I saw this great thing, like people talking about particularly Christian culture and the situation of the present day. And these two Christians are talking about oh, apologetics and like apologia is like such a big deal. And like, yeah, nobody who's not a Christian gives a shit about your apologia. Like, it's
no,
not
they don't.
appealing to a foundation that moves the needle one bit. Leftists kind of a similar thing, and like, because they only conduct psychological attacks. Like, okay, you stay in your lane, be principally truth concerned, and if you want to deal with them, like, yeah, just focus on making them feel bad.
Well, and that's the moral. A person's moral. Like, so let's take Matt Walsh, right? His personal moral compass is Christian, but he doesn't really make Christian arguments. But I think
No.
maybe Christianity guides him personally to maybe have the bravery, or maybe just have the chutzpah to go out and make these documentaries like "What is a Woman" and such and such. So I think that Christianity should be indirect. I actually, my conception of Christianity, my family's conception is, we don't even pray, and when we say don't pray in public, we don't pray in front of each other. It's very private.
Yeah.
We don't. We follow things very much the book, and you don't proselytize. Like, you can bring the word, but you're not a disciple, right? Like, most people already know what Christianity is, and people already know where they stand. So if you find someone who's really good, then you can talk about it. But Like, I think the best Christian I've known about who's a public figure is probably Wendigoon, because he almost never talks
Mhm.
about it. He's just a YouTube personality. It's like on a podcast or two he's talked about it, and that's it. When he's asked,
Yeah.
but you can kind of tell that he is, because he's just a good person. Like, that's the way people should know. Because if you have to say you are one, then you're not one. And I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if Matt Walsh doesn't actually lose anything by just not being one. If no one ever knew, uh, so that's the strength. I think the religion should stay out of the politics, not because it's politics shouldn't be religious, but it's just not effective right now in this hyper
Yeah.
rational world.
On the other hand, I will say, like, I'm not particularly I'm not a particularly spiritual person at all. But I have been sorely tempted at times to recommend beginning like a stand-up meeting with a group prayer, uh or like a project meeting, or even like
You can just
like,
troll
oh
if you
yeah,
want.
maybe saying a group prayer before a podcast is a good idea. um and here's the thing, I don't have a particularly strong rational argument for that. It just feels right.
Yeah, no, the feels right is actually probably better, because at least you understand how you feel. You don't actually understand what you think,
Mhm.
because it's just a whole rabbit hole of stuff, which is kind of why I like using this gigantic this Ouija board the size of a country to go where we feel. Like in 2020, um, being this aggressive with rioters would have been a big mistake. In
Mhm.
2025, being this aggressive with rioters seems to be about right. In 2029, I don't know where we're going to be if there's rioters. It might be something spicier. I know that they arrested like 80 Antifa people in New York last night. I think it
Mhm.
was some massive number. It's like
Oh,
that didn't happen
nice.
in 2020. Like, you
Yeah.
probably have enough for a racketeering case on a federal level. That could be a RICO if there's funding, and that
Mhm.
actually might lead to something, because that's how we got rid of the mob.
Oh no, yeah,
Um,
there absolutely is. It's
so I
it's
think
just an
yeah.
unwillingness to do it.
Yeah, there's so another revealed preference of Americanism is that we're pretty gradual. And anybody who says we should do stuff faster, and I'm like, no, we don't. No, we don't need to do that faster, because it's always dumber. That's like it's operating a country is kind of like doing surgery, and you don't actually know the anatomy of the patient. It's like there's nothing that should be done faster. Should it be done? Should it be done super slowly? Not at all. I mean, obviously we have to keep moving, but like people who don't want to raise the debt ceiling right at this very moment. There are people who don't want to raise the debt ceiling right at this very moment. I'm like, you have a runaway train called our budget, and those are mandatory spending things. That's what's driving the budget. It's mandatory spending, there's only so much we can do in a reconciliation bill. And you have this runaway train, and there's a chasm. And it's like, do you want to fund the bridge that's going to span the chasm that will be built in time for the train to go over it, or would you like the train to just go into the chasm? I was like, you could either
Mhm.
default on our debt, or we could buy ourselves some time to fix this. And of course, the purists, libertarians, are raising up this big fuss and making the normies not like it. I'm like, you guys need to shut up. And
Yeah.
now Rand Paul's not invited to the picnic.
Yep. By the way, I've got to run and manage the dogs for a few minutes. I might
Oh
also
yeah,
take
sure.
a quick bio break, but I'll try and follow along if you're cool running
No,
solo for a minute.
absolutely no. It's all good. It's all good. Appreciate it, man. All right. Yeah. So Americanism versus liberalism and conservatism, right? The purpose of this episode here is that I don't think that we're following conservatism or liberalism anymore. I think that we're following something I would call Americanism. That we have this marriage of what was liberalism, right? The 90s liberals. I mean, the entire Trump cabinet is like 90s liberals, okay? How could you call them conservatives? Well, you can't call them liberals now, because they're not current liberals. They believe that men have penises and girls have vaginas. That's crazy. Uh, so what do we call them? Uh, right now, the identity of the United States has been ceded to the conservatives. I'm going to call them MAGA. Like the United States flag belongs to MAGA. Right now, it seems the conservatives seem to have the Israeli flag. Well, good for them. Okay, I don't really care about Israel. Despite my last name, I couldn't give a rat's patoot about Israel or any other country that isn't America. Do I care about any other countries? I don't even care about my ancestral homeland of like Indonesia or Singapore. They better get on the American train. Anyways, the liberalism of the 90s has been transformed quite a bit, right? You can't even really call Trump a 90s liberal anymore, because there's a lot more teeth to it now. There's a lot more overt patriotism. There's a lot of anti-interventionism overseas, although trying to promote peace around the world. This new Americanism, this MAGA Americanism, has grabbed a lot of the Christian values from the conservatives, but as I said before, it seems to be more of a personal thing, right? It's I'm personally praying. Like Trump hasn't said anything particularly religious for a hot minute, right? He obviously is keeping it to himself, which I think is the appropriate thing to do, especially if you're Christian. We have this amalgamation of non-authoritarian. It's Christian but non-authoritarian. Let me put it that way. So, but we have an authoritarian pro-American stance when it comes to the border, right? The border crossings are now like way down, way down. The new Americanism that is now coming forth from all of this, the new Americanism that is coming forth from all this has borrowed different pieces. And as we've talked about before, Americans do not feel any slavery to any particular doctrine, right? If you ask what is libertarianism to a libertarian, always have every single one of them will have a different answer. They do not hold to a doctrine. And Americans do not belong to doctrines. So this new emergent thing, what is Americanism? It is I would say it's America first, America the best. Stuff like meritocracy is held way above birth, right? People would turn on, let's say Barron Trump, they want him to run again. If Barron sucked, like he didn't have the merit to ever run for office, I don't think people would back him just because of his name. I don't think so, just predicting based on American behaviors. The different handicaps that you can levy towards billionaires. You can have a free market or you can have a fair market. That distinction is massive. That distinction between fair market and free market is one of the biggest changes of this new emerging Americanism to every philosophy that's come before it. Right? Corporate relations, stifling productivity, stifling the different businesses, small businesses, those things. Any corporation that starts stifling these other businesses, there's going to be some action politically or locally to stop it. In other words, these conservatives, these Americanists, are not in the pocket of corporations all the time. It's not like, oh, this is a giant corporation, it pays a lot of taxes, therefore it does what it wants, which is the sort of libertarian stance. That doesn't seem to be the case. The Trump versus Musk stuff has pretty much proven that being the richest man in the world does not make you the most powerful man. The legislation all right, so as I said before, I think social media is actually one of the best things that ever happened to America. It is a force of good overall. Of course, it has drawbacks, right? There's certain people that shouldn't be on it. But social media has made transparency so much better for these different bills. People are, as soon as a bill comes out, yeah, it might be a 10,000 page bill, but there's 100,000 people reading it and scrutinizing it and using AI tools to scrutinize it and then retweeting sections of the bill to their congressman. That is amazing. It used to be that you have to read the whole thing yourself. You'd have to get on the phone or write a letter to your congressman, and maybe they care, maybe they don't. There's no sense of public shame in that. The Americanists are very politically involved and fairly well politically informed. The comment that we are an economic zone, certain parts of America are going to be economic zones because those places don't really have a sense of place and they don't care about the destruction until they do. It's usually a rubber banding effect, like a pendulum swing. The hyper pro-American stance of the Americanists at the moment is showing that there is a lot of care towards what America is as an identity and as a place. It does not feel good to an Americanist for a steel mill to shut down. It is good to reopen the steel mill. And as a matter of fact, there are startups like Bethlehem Steel is trying to come back. And there's different sheet metal and manufacturing companies that are coming out of the woodwork in America. And oddly enough, you need to have some level of economic zone, right? You need to have the factory. And you need to have certain preference, right? The way that you stop from becoming an economic zone is preference towards the locals, right? Preference towards the locals. That means if I'm an almond farmer, and then all of a sudden a bunch of almonds from South America show up that are half the price of mine, and that wipes my farm out, like, is that allowed to happen? Are there tariffs? Is there an embargo? Is there something to stop that, right? That's what happens when you are actually actively fighting becoming an economic zone. But right now, as long as there is an ability for foreign nationals to buy land, an unlimited amount of land, foreign national companies to buy land, or even interstate companies, right, to buy up the area. It's going to be like that. And frankly, American history has been that way, that these villages would pop up and the original people in those village, they get pushed out by other people that come in. It happened a lot during the gold rush. It pretty much happens anytime there's any sort of economic activity, any change in the economics, right? Or and we've talked about immigrants now, but you got to remember that Irish Catholic immigrants came en masse, displaced a lot of local workers, lowered wages. Same thing with Italians, lowered wages. Italians also were very corrupt. And all these ethnic groups are extremely nepotistic, right? That just means they have the ethnic cohesion. They would rather hire one of their own. So you'd have Italians pretty much take over a company, and they might take over a labor union, right? And you see Italians, despite the fact that they don't make up a huge amount of the population, they're very localized, and they end up kind of turning certain industries into cartels, right? And certainly once Prohibition hit, it was all bets were off. You know, there were Jewish gangsters, there were Irish gangsters, there were English gangsters, there were Italian gangsters, and Italians are the ones that just won out. I think it's because of their family cohesion and their cooperation that allowed that. But like it's a big whirlwind of a country, right? That's why I don't think that. That's why I don't think that relying on externalities to keep you afloat is good, right? So this is what I was talking about with Cosma earlier: is that if your culture requires externalities, right? If I open a kebab shop in your town, am I going to take over all your business and no one's going to like the local food anymore because my kebabs are just awesome? Well, you need to make your local food better, because you can't keep the kebabs out. You could try to keep the kebabs out forever, but there's just a certain attraction that is going to end up drawing people to that stuff, right? And family structure and cohesion is one of the most important things for maintaining any sort of civilization. Hey, Alex, I'm just talking about the externalities versus internalities. Just wrapping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was following along while
okay.
a coalition of cats and dogs had broken into
awesome.
the pet food closet.
Oh, dang. Okay, they all go ham.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Enjoy cleaning that up, because you got the food to clean up, and they have the aftermath afterwards, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but we're settled now. You know, man, the case of the Italians is an interesting one.
The Italians were okay. The Italians were like the Indians of their day, because even the word like fugazi is Italian. It means fake. Mm-hmm. Like and Ponzi scheme. Ponzi is an Italian. So everyone's giving Indians crap today, and I'm like, they just look like Italians to me.
You know,
who are more law abiding, as far as I know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's interesting is like I'd heard somebody give the take that. Oh, for sure. I'd heard somebody give the take that the show The Sopranos was actually documenting in real time the social forces that were leading to the the death of Italian American culture as a distinct identity. It still exists in places like Jersey Shore, but in the main has sort of actually collapsed after being, transmitted in, its final form in The Sopranos.
It's kind of the destiny of all. So the thing about the melting pot, right? Which I think, yeah, there's a melting pot. I think it's more of like a crucible, and we're making an alloy, this American alloy, and a lot of slag and detritus is being pulled out of that, a lot of impurities. So what you end up having is you have people that appropriate let's say you have one culture and another culture, right? Okay. Let's say you have two cultures, and culture A has is great at business, and culture B has like the best music and like lingo and style and all that stuff, right? Well, the thing is, the people on culture B, as long as they're open to intermingling, they're going to start exchanging cultures, right? This is the reason why the Uber culture, to use a very ironic word for this, are probably the Orthodox Jews, because they're extremely resistant to wanting to exchange with others, which is why they get a certain reputation, right? And that's just that's just the very Orthodox Jews, like the Diamond Street Jews, not in general, right? This is whereas my culture is very open to exchange, so we had really good business sense, and my mom's family was extremely like hardy and tough, so you end up getting I'm half Chinese ethnically, and I'm a half Northern English. So I'm like a 6 foot tall, 260 pound farmhand who also has the brain of a Chinese guy. I even have a wok out there to cook with. It's pretty good. So like, am I a dissolution or am I a new thing? Like the thing is the idea that cultures are dissolving is to also think that there is a zero sum in cultures, and that cultures are only valuable because they're distinct from each other. Whereas you are creating a new culture. So when I see Kid Rock on the spin tables last night, spinning. I think the song is called Josie. Josie was far away, like a little bit older. I don't want to lose your love. So he was rap. He's doing that. It was like, okay, you're taking like West Coast spin stuff. You're taking this like absolute is a Cars song, right? And you're doing this awesome thing with light show. The light show is actually really technical. If you've ever done any sort of stagecraft, it is insane to get a concert venue together. And I'm like, is this less than the sum of its parts? Or is this more? Is this just different? That's why it's Americanism, right? And I don't know if Americanism lives with hyphens.
I don't think it does. I don't think it lives with hyphens. I mean, and the hyphenated phase ought to be transitory.
Yes,
okay, we're making this alloy, and you're bringing in a temporary hyphenated phase, essentially where what is broadly to the social fabric's good is adapted and incorporated, and the rest is discarded. And over the course of this adaptation process, you will eventually become indistinguishable from the rest.
And the thing is, every time a culture starts to become homogenous, that is when it is indistinguishable from the rest. Like, so people are saying like, I'm losing my culture. It's like, no, you're becoming an American, and that's not a bad thing. But to become an American is to become a foreigner of what was once familiar, and it might feel like it calls to you a little bit. And you can be in service of it to help it out, right? Like being an exchange student or being an exchange or like opening a business or, if I was Scottish, I would open a call center in Scotland. It's a beautiful accent. A lot of people do it. I'd helping people out is not a bad thing. Like if you're Indian and you want to open up have a supplier in India and you're following all the laws and doing things right, there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of favoritism towards your ancestral people, but like it doesn't come at the cost of your new adopted. It's not even adopted family. A lot of us are born into it, either through the blood of an oath or the water of the womb. Like we are Americans.
Yeah, there's it's interesting because we are Americans, and there is still regionalism. A Bostonian is different from
yes,
is different from a Phoenician, is different from et cetera, et cetera. What unifies us as Americans is even though we have these variations. We still have fellow feeling across these differences and shared membership in the over tribe.
And people call that the social contract stuff, and they keep poo-pooing social contracts. But I think that's a derogatory almost. It's not a social.
No, yeah, wait. Social contract is on its face stupid. But what people are fumbling to describe with the term social contract that is inadequate is very, very real. One of the things just on American liberalism or Americanism, one of the things that gets discounted a lot from race is I would say Black Americans as a descriptive term, not as a hyphenated term. Black Americans are an African genetic lineage of Anglo-Saxons. They participate. So one of the things that was said about Africans brought over in the slave trade is that they had their culture ripped from them, which is absolutely true. and
Hmm.
they had to inherit some other culture, and it turns
Oh
out to
well, and
mostly be the like Northern England Appalachian culture
right,
slash Southern England culture. But yeah, they were denaturized of their culture and became an African
became something new.
descended genetic lineage that was fully participatory in Americanized Anglo-Saxon
and,
culture.
and this is what I would do with if I was trying to like work with black culture or something like that, right? Like this is the strategy. If I was some executive of subversion, and I was like, all right, MAGA, we're gonna bring black people into the fold here. We're all gonna become Americans again. I'd be like, no. I'd tell the African the black Americans like, no, you're better than the Africans. They sold you. You overcame. You fought. You became actually on par with the whites in America. And that you're not all the whites, right? Like your locals, the place you were in,
Yeah.
you were a Southerner. Like there's no
That's
division
that's
here.
very
Yeah,
that's very similar to Muhammad Ali's take when he
yeah,
went to Africa, and he's like, "Dude, we're so different." And like, I would take a black
yes,
American woman every time over marrying an
mm-hmm.
African woman. And I think this was sort of back in the '90s, like the position which we were fully realizing and had reconciled the consequences of. And I think why there's now a lot of anxiety on the right uh, toward American blacks is actually that the communist subversion was incredibly
Yeah,
successful, and
yes,
rather and in many cases, not all cases, again because we're in aggregate land,
right,
but in aggregate, there's a growing movement to reject membership in the overtribe,
right.
which
Yeah, the
was
counterculture.
the premise on which it worked.
And the problem is the overtribe, I think, got to. So I'm fascinated with this idea of structure versus adaptability because to be an American before wasn't that much. There wasn't a whole lot to it, right? You pretty much just had to be a local that belonged in your place, right? If you're from
Yes.
Tennessee, you're good. But then after World War II, being an American was like, uh, you. There was so much mass communication as to what you were supposed to be,
Hmm.
and there was now like visibility into other regions that there started becoming interregional almost conflicts. Like the television medium is one of the weirdest mediums because it's so mass and it's so one way
Yeah.
that it can drive the conversation in ways that are it's like a nail that you could drive in but you can't pull out again, and it just keeps going and going and you can't ever
Yeah.
undo it. Whereas social media is a back and forth where I could diffuse this whole there's like an anti-southern sentiment, right? If there's some anti-southern sentiment, I could diffuse that by putting on lots of like Instagrams and reels of like happy families.
Hmm.
They're not wearing shoes. Like, we don't have nice shoes, but we have a nice life and we love it, and being kind to strangers and stuff like that. A lot of positive stuff. Whereas the mass communication is just whatever they want to tell you, right?
Hmm.
And it's used for good and for bad. The modern American accent is kind of born from mass communication, which is why, when I'm doing vocal work to learn how to sing, a lot of the noises that you're supposed to make are American noises. Like if you listen to a British person singing and they're singing vocally correct in a vocally correct way, it's an American accent because
Oh yeah.
because an American accent is supposed to be vocally correct. Like when you see Donald Trump going to do this like shape with his mouth, that's the appropriate for E. E.
E.
Yeah, E. It actually projects better because if you do like E, see how that sounds terrible? E. E. Yeah,
Yeah.
irritating. Yeah, so it's a evidence of a classically trained vocalist, and then once you put a bunch of classically trained vocalists on the radio and on the television for everyone to see, you lose the localization aspect. The
Yeah.
crazy thing, yeah, the crazy thing now is that with social media, you get a localization, but it's virtual rather than geographic,
Mhm.
and I don't know if that's good or not. I don't think it is.
Uh, I so you started by saying social media on net has done more good than harm. I'm kind of the opposite perspective, and not just for Jonathan Haidt like reasons, like hand wringing about attention, children, etc. But more that it is a wild and uncontrolled uncontrollable culture collider that's heavily dominated by the English language and by American conceptions. Um, like, okay, it's one thing to say America is a nation of immigrants, and like, depending on how you slice it, that could be true. Um, versus, the Brits saying like the UK is a nation of immigrants. Okay, first off, that's objectively false.
Yeah.
Second, at no point in your history would you have ever said this. Never,
No.
ever, ever, ever. Until mass communication got to such a point that you were dominated by American airwaves and American ways of thinking, and you just absorbed this,
Oh no, yeah, no.
this set of words that is maybe true in the United States, but is definitely not true in your case. And like,
Yeah.
everyone, one of the reasons I would say social media is more harmful than beneficial is that everyone has imbibed American cultural exports, including deliberate poisoning of other countries by America. And it's caused a breakdown of their particular social fabrics.
Oh man, I could be so spicy and be like, "That sounds awesome." What are you talking about? It's a bad thing. I'm I'm an Americanist, right? So
I mean,
I'm no longer.
it's terraforming the world for America, but
Yeah. I already.
in the
Yeah.
short run, it causes a lot of misery.
Oh,
But also the other thing is
I'm just
like
being a jerk.
terraforming the world, in to Americanism is not necessarily a good thing. And you can rate the technological merits of
Sounds
a
seditious to
given
me, Alex.
society or culture, but like cultures evolve in with an acknowledgement of place and geography and other factors of objective reality that are very, very important. I don't think Americanism would work particularly well in the rural areas of the Caucasus Mountains. I've been told so by like Armenians and oh god, what are they called? The folks with the camels and the eagle hunting. I don't remember the name of that ethnic group.
Oh, Tatars.
Tatars or shit. It's one of the oldest contiguous ethnic groups. Like this group is described as joining Xerxes' Persian army, and their way of life today is in many regards like indistinguishable from what it was like 4,000 years ago.
Yeah. So yeah, by the way, speaking as an Americanist, I didn't even consider the rest of the world in my assessment of whether something is good or not. But
of course, because Americans don't, because our perspective is inherently like one of an ecumenical empire. Of course we wouldn't.
Our philosophy is like get good, man. Get good, scrub. Well, the thing is that America actually, ironically, respects those cultures, even if those cultures don't respect themselves after being exposed to Americans. You know what I mean? Americans would love it if England was just stereotypical England. Like if an American was put in charge of England, we'd purge everyone that doesn't have a lineage from like 500 years or doesn't have like a few families to vouch for them, right? Like, okay, this person fought in this war. All right, the village is okay with them being there. We'd purge it, and we'd build a big theme park of like, all right, we just want you to operate the Harry Potter theme park. Okay, I want to bring my kids over, and I want you guys to read some poems. Oh, that's great. This is a great village. We de-urbanize London significantly. There'd be like a 5-block. It'd be like Las Vegas, where there's like 5 blocks of urbanization, and then a bunch of like suburban areas, like villages. That'd be London.
Did you ever watch Arrested Development?
No, well, I didn't watch the whole show.
There's a section where Michael has this girlfriend named Rita, and she takes him to her family-owned Britain themed theme park called Wee Britain.
Oh wait, Wee Britain. There's a couple of theme parks called Wee Britain. There's one in Japan, and there's a German village actually in America somewhere. So is it one
Why
of those?
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, hell yeah, we've got a German village somewhere in South Carolina, I think. I forget. No, we kind of want them to be the stereotypes they always were, and they seem to also want to be their own stereotypes, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I was like, do it. I love it. We might actually go there and visit. We might get out of America once in a while. But we're very similar to Japan in that way. So we're
Mhm.
kind of ignorant and also optimistic about everyone else's identity and think it's as
Yeah.
strong as ours, and it's not.
Japan has two forms of teaboos. There's the
Mm.
British weebs and the Texas weebs, and they're both sometimes called teaboos.
Oh, really? Like, cause wait, you mean Japanese people that wish they were a different culture?
Yeah.
Oh
Or
man,
are just massive fans of it. Actually, one of the weirdest things I ever found was this, because I'm really into cooking. Like, it's one of my favorite hobbies. And I was watching like a bunch of barbecue stuff, like particularly centered on smoking. And I found this one YouTube channel called Pitmaster X, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a really compelling recipe. But this guy's accent is so strange. Like, is he some
oh,
guy who just settled in like Texas? And like, I'm watching his videos. I'm like, wait, there's a truck in the background. That's not an American license plate. And it
the
turns out
cake.
it's this, yeah, it's this guy he's like Dutch and has this like
Oh,
100% deep Texas like lifestyle.
that's awesome. We
Really,
love
really
that.
good channel, but it's the most peculiar thing on earth until you realize what's happening.
Well, my grandfather was a big a Dutch. I don't even know what you call it, a Dutchaboo.
Mhm.
But because the Dutch were our rulers, the Dutch were our bosses. We have fond memories of them. Although they were horrendously oppressive and brutal, we still miss them. We were always like the henchman, like the bookkeeping henchman, who was like
The
not
perennial
necessary.
sidekick.
Yeah, we're not getting the beatings directly, but we are. I mean, we're my family's lineage is from the Capitan Governor of the Dutch East Indies for a few years, and we. If you start a bank, the Dutch will put you in charge of something. Let me just put it that way. We decided to create a competing bank with the Dutch, and they were like, "We'll just buy you out and put you in charge." I
Mhm.
was like, "Ah, that sounds like a good deal." But yeah, my grandpa's place was just filled with like all this Dutch like tapestries, like a scene of windmills and stuff like that. This is like the weirdest thing to be in like these Vietnam jungle looking villa, like in this jungle essentially is where he lives or where he lived
Mhm.
until he passed away. So yeah, America's international relations are our effect is disastrous to everyone, but we actually wish them the best. And maybe they will. I'm hoping that they will learn a few things from America and what we're doing
Yeah.
and replicate it to preserve their culture. And it seems like
God, I hope they don't replicate some aspects of our international relations.
well, I don't
You
think they
ever watch
can.
you ever watch Yuri Bezmenov talk about destabilization?
Oh yeah, yeah,
It turns out the Americans, it's like that's the language of the technology as developed by the Soviet Union. It turns out in the same period of time, the Americans, through convergent evolution or independent development, essentially developed the same technology,
mm,
and much of our cultural export is deliberately exporting destabilization because
yeah,
as Antonio Gramsci discovered, it is very, very hard to get stable, rooted, established cultures where people are happy to do what you want. So if you
yes,
want to get people to do what you want, you simply destabilize them and you make them weak and break up social bonds. The trick for America too is because we had such poor control over our own intelligence community is we
yes,
also destabilized ourselves. But essentially since
yeah.
like the 50s, America's cultural exports have also basically always been poison pills on purpose.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the institutions that are falling apart, right? The Americanism is by its own preferences destroying Hollywood, which was a major, I think, exporter of that culture, and also USAID, which would fund
Mhm.
revolutions in different countries and pretty much be the funding arm of the
Yeah.
CIA. I think we're
Yeah.
dismantling that aspect of
Oh,
our foreign.
I mean, I,
Yeah,
I love what Rubio's doing, but I'll believe he's serious when we have a bonfire of the nonprofits.
right. Yeah, we'll see. We'll
Um,
see.
like,
I'm
like,
optimistic, but we'll
like,
see.
I'm waiting for a good solid 40% of 501c3s to be abolished and prosecuted.
Well, I think it would be. I think I'd settle for less. I would settle for just no more federal funding and ever go to an NGO ever again. If you're
Yeah,
non-governmental,
I agree.
no money ever again, and they'll just die on their own.
Well,
They'll set themselves on fire.
you know how NGOs are bad for you is that Tony Blair one of his early acts as of his parliament was outlawing them.
Yeah. Yep,
And
that's
then
smart.
they had like dozens of pieces of legislation a day, government, for a really long time. And one of their last acts out the door was, we'll re-legalize NGOs.
Well,
It,
and the problem with
it's
making
they're
yeah.
just straight up bad for your ability to be effective. They're
Well, yeah.
literally just bad.
My only concern about like outlawing, I mean, I'm okay actually with 501c3s, or I'm okay with organizations if they're taxed. Like the taxing doesn't really matter to me, but I would bet that certain outreach programs like Turning Point USA are probably NGOs at the moment. Like NGOs do serve a good purpose on our side as well, and on all sides.
Yeah.
But it's just that the poison pill of government funding means it becomes shadow money.
Yeah.
Whereas
I mean,
if it was, oh, good.
I could be wrong on this, but my perspective is conduct a mass cull, because the legal framework as it exists right now is, like, it's difficult to dissect, and you have no idea how much bad stuff is going on in it. Like,
All right, I see what you're
destroy
saying.
it and then create a new simplified legal framework, where you actually have controls over the incentives, and you're not dealing with, like, sort of legacy code or code debt.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Although that's not very incrementalist of you.
Uh, well, so here's the thing. Here's the thing: is when a
Here's the thing.
revolutionary perspective is appropriate, is when the things that you have accumulated are actively harmful to you.
Oh, I see.
Like, sometimes, like, if you can determine that the proverbial Chesterton's fence was built for a reason, but is now, like, serving contrary to that reason and is actually impeding you, yeah, you should destroy it.
Well, and this is the great thing about the being on the right now. Like the Americanist movement is that we get to have debates like this, and there's
Yeah.
nothing that's out. There's very little that's outside the Overton window. Actually, the Overton. So this Overton window stuff, again, a philosophical construct that was it was Overton an American or a European?
I don't know offhand.
Because the two I theory. I'm going to put a pause. I'm going to put a posit here. I'm going to put a little idea out here that I want you to consider. Really, truly consider. I don't know if the right actually has an Overton window versus like in terms of what we talk about.
Mhm.
Like I wouldn't mind. I don't mind Nick Fuentes and Kanye West clowning it up. I'm just going to laugh. I'm not going. There's no window there though where there's an opacity over them, right? I don't think
Yeah.
the right actually has an Overton window. I think we're willing to listen to any crazy thing, and then once you've listened to it enough and we've heard it, we're like, okay, we're bored now. I don't really want to listen to it. I'm good.
Yeah.
I mean,
The means
HH
of
was
the
pretty
means
good
of
track.
Joseph Paul Overton, American, by the way. The means
Yeah.
of policing the Overton window are so absolutely tedious. Like, I think you're right that the Overton window by and large is very open at the minute. But I almost wish, like, just I'm so sick of the same boring conversations. I'm sick of being bored by conversations about this. Like, I just wish,
Yeah.
if you wanted to use social media like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, in order to be allowed to do it, you just have to submit a video of yourself saying, like, NFK, like, etc. Like, just go down the whole roster and, like, okay, can we talk about things now?
Uh, yeah. And the thing is, I feel like if there is an Overton window, it's not firm, and it like reopens whenever there's a new point. But it's a little bit like law. Like every time we have one of these big public debates, public blowups, I think it's a little bit like going on a court case, and that we don't really
Mhm,
do double jeopardy. Like the right doesn't like to revisit stuff. Like what
mhm.
we're almost like creatures of trend. Like what
Yeah,
is a woman was hot for
we're
a couple months?
precedential, and
Yeah.
it's something we've inherited from the English. And I don't think about it too much, and it is kind of one of our strengths. But it's also,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like, there's a lot I could say about how the American legal system is. People talk about, America is like, oh, growing pains and things the founders didn't foresee, and they usually talk about stupid shit like fully
Yeah.
automatic weapons, or the imperial presidency is a little more salient, but, like, almost nobody talks about our judicial system was designed, like premised on a world where 18th century technology never changes.
Right. Right.
And just our population numbers alone actually break the framing of our third branch of government. Like America's legal system is in low key collapse and has
Yes.
been for
Yes.
50 years. Like it's super
It's a good
fucked
point.
up.
I saw a good chat here that people are talking about the Epstein conversation is a waste of time, and I said about confronting issues. Right, confronting issues is actually what makes you realize what you truly believe in.
Mhm.
People are filling their diapers up with all their poo poo about Epstein for a couple of weeks, and then nothing happened, and then they moved on, and no one's really left the coalition.
Mhm.
So it wasn't important. We now know what we actually believe. The revealed preference is, we'd like to have it,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we're going. It'll be a stain, but we're still buying the thing. Like it's a stain on the couch, but I'm still buying the couch. It's still a
Right,
good
yeah.
price. It's the best
No, yeah,
couch I can get.
everybody still
Yeah, yeah,
believes he killed himself, and most people like, it kind of doesn't matter to me if the government acknowledges it. Like it's a bit
yeah.
like the Kennedy assassination.
I would love to. Yeah, exactly. The Kennedy, like it was earth shattering for a while, but does it really change the thing? Uh, Not really. It's kind of neither here. The problem with it is the past is the past. Uh, and judging by the work of James O'Keefe, it seems like you could just stroll in to Capitol Hill and then get tons of compromise on people. So
Mhm.
at this point, like getting lots and lots of compromise on our elected officials is not really impressive. I just assume every country's got it. I'd be surprised if there's a country on earth that doesn't have it. Right? Like Myanmar.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, the compromise and like James O'Keefe, like what they reveal are a couple of things. Like, one, that are elected officials and appointed officials or members of staff for Congress or stuff like that, like, are a class of deeply unremarkable people.
Yeah, yeah. They belong.
Also, the other thing it reveals is, boy, it's not nice to say this, but the 1950s were right, in that, like, unmarried homosexuals are a massive operational security
Yeah,
risk,
no, it's so
especially in the
easy.
age of Grinder. Like,
Yeah,
if you're concerned about OPSEC, like somebody who's not tied down to some kind of secure relationship, heterosexual or not, and is like fastidious with their exposures on a prurient sexual basis, that person's a huge security liability.
yeah. The when I was with the
And I
Mormons,
mean, like heterosexuals can be this way too,
oh
but
yeah, yeah.
like
No,
James
homosexuals are
O'Keefe
like way.
has to
Yeah,
go through so little effort. Like thirsty dudes don't care that my
yeah,
grinder match looks exactly like James O'Keefe.
yeah, yeah. He puts on the pair of glasses, dyes his hair blonde or something like that. No, these guys are absolutely a trap. And uh, addictions. When I was at the Mormons, they used to describe it this way: is the reason why they're against like tea and coffee and stuff is because they don't want you to have any addictions at all because they want to maximize agency. And I was like, that's an
That's
interesting
that's a really good way to put it. And what you're
Yeah.
dealing with is a problem of sex addiction.
Yes, exactly. Like it. When I'm
This is
talking with, yeah,
this is like low key one of the reasons why like pornography is actually like from a non-moral perspective, if you are interested in operational security, pornography and the psychological and trends entailed from the consumption thereof are actively bad for you.
right. Well, it depends on your. So I actually had this conversation with my wife and everything because there was another flare up of like ladies talking about porn addiction because it's like comes up because the ladies like to point their finger at you and slap that Bible on the desk if they
Mhm.
catch their husband once with porn. I was like, there's certain things that you indulge in that reduce the amount that you need to indulge it in it. Like, is it a controlling thing? Is it a pressure release valve, or is it a positive feedback loop? And that's the reason why like
Right,
I can have alcohol, but other people cannot because to me it's a
right,
pressure relief versus them it's a coping mechanism that becomes a positive feedback loop. And
right.
that's the problem is that like the all the
Yeah,
trouble it
sometimes
takes. Yeah,
sometimes you take your aid and jerk off, and then you can face the real world
right.
in, like not having to think about this thing.
Right, and that's why it's actually kind of good that women don't have as high of a sex drive as men. It's like there's got to be someone who says no, And there's also got to be someone who says, yeah, maybe after you finish the shed, right? You've built this or you've done that, or like it has some condition to it of like some quest you got to go on, so that it's
I
not just
mean,
all the time.
honestly, my experience is that like female attraction is multivariate and often difficult to comprehend for men. Male sexuality is like so monovariant; it's hard to comprehend. Like, is that
Well,
really all
yeah,
there is
it's
for women?
male
I think
sexuality is like a mile wide and an inch deep, right?
my experience of female sexuality is actually that the sex drive is significantly higher, as is the gooning, but it like the sexual preferences is also multivariate and much harder to identify as
right.
such.
Yeah, it's a thing about like guys, once they've gotten what they needed, they're done with it. It's no longer a big deal, and it's like you can almost typify a guy by like just what's the interval, right? Like what is the interval? The interval's never infinity. But anyways,
Mhm.
off topic. Like these sort of conversation, like the moralism branch of Christianity is probably going to get beaten down in the Americanist movement because it's kind of cringe and lame, and it's it's a vestige of like the 90s super duper Christians. So there's going to be some spirituality of like, oh yeah, this feels demonic. Like it is not unusual to hear a right winger on Twitter or wherever else say like, oh yeah, drug addiction is straight up demonic. And that's a conversation you can have without people rolling their eyes of like, oh, this guy is one of those crazies. However, if I start telling you that you aren't allowed to do this and you aren't allowed to do that, then people will still roll their eyes. Typically,
Mhm.
there's some pushback there. So spirituality is being allowed, and it's largely Christian spirituality, whereas Christian like moralizing and rules still not so much. Probably never will
Yeah.
because that's a that's kind of a big ask, and no one people only want to follow rules they've consented to.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's kind of like the long and short of that. So
I mean,
uh,
that's something that's super important, and I think a bit of an older conception is con- conceiving as of yourself as belonging to a community, or conceiving of yourself as belonging to a place, in that you subordinate yourself to a broader power.
right,
And I think part of what's weird about American culture, and part of I think just what's weird about post modernity, or like even the modern period, um, is the idea that God is dead, and you should never have to subordinate yourself to another power. But
right.
it's like the
That's
fact of the matter is
yeah.
you don't exist in and of yourself, and you are subordinate whether you like it or not.
Yeah, there is a sense of community accountability with the new Americanist movement.
Mhm.
It's not like I could do whatever I want. Like the pushback against marijuana and the pushback against gay marriage is actually kind of interesting, and it's probably going to
Mhm.
continue because we've done the marijuana experiment, as Voltaire may or may not have said, as like once a philosopher, twice a pervert, when it came to
Oh
sexual
my
orgies
god,
and stuff. Yeah, but like we did the marijuana
Voltaire.
thing. We did it once. We legalized it once. It'll probably not be legalized again. It'll probably get pushed back because it just doesn't.
I think that's probably right. I mean, I think that'll probably get pushed back significantly faster than gay marriage.
Yes, yeah,
I
because
mean,
gay marriage is not
you
nearly
know,
as. I mean, amazingly, it's not as cringe as being a pothead. So being a
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, yeah. I mean, I just had like my own micro rant on the James O'Keefe OPSEC factor. But I think it's obvious on the face of it that that marijuana completely free of stigma, not that it's a great moral crime or anything,
yeah,
but
yeah,
completely free of stigma is an obvious moral harm.
yeah.
And
I
it's
think
a
the lib.
bigger
Yeah,
and more obvious moral harm than homosexuality, which like homosexuality, like you kind of have to admit, like factually is natural. You just have to like don't be a gooner kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. It's like it has to be shamed, right?
Yeah.
It was better when they have to be more committed actually when they're have to stay in the closet, right? Because as soon as they find the one gay guy, they're like, I'm never gonna find another one. This is it. This is my
But
soulmate.
when you started speaking, it so in practice, it often doesn't work that way in documented cases. But when you
Okay.
started speaking, my mind immediately went to, oh yeah, pot users in the closet, like significantly more industrious, and like
Yes,
when you
yeah,
had
yeah.
to meet
You
a
should be
guy in
ashamed
a
of it.
in a parking lot, like there were actually the shaming of it had some weird social benefit, like
Correct.
encoded into use some weird social benefits. You know what I mean?
No, shame is actually important. In fact, I think only difference between an effective society and an ineffective society, the root of it is shame. Like, do you feel shame? So the idea of that we're going to be shameless about things is going to be gone. I think that the big conflict next, to be a bit optimistic, we're kind of mopping up the liberal enemy. They're hanging on by a thread. But I mean, you look at the optics of like who's on Capitol Hill and what's going on. It is a cringe fest, and they've lost the plot, and it's going to be a slow death. And we should not stop We should not stop like beating that until its heart is truly stopped. But the
Mhm.
next big adversary is probably going to be libertarians, and that's going to be a very fast fight, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, because libertarianism is just a species of liberalism.
Like strict,
It,
like strict, full
I mean,
on.
I
Yeah,
said this when I was a libertarian. Is like ideologically at its core, libertarianism is a leftist movement.
I said that
Um,
once to Dan Vask, and he got really mad. You know, the Dan Vask who does the theme song for Nerdrotics. So
mhm,
I made it like a good thread. I thought I was making good points. I was like, it's highly hyper materialistic. It quantifies happiness as material items.
yeah,
It's one that wants to liberate you from the bonds of social
mhm,
accountability. What
yep,
was the other one? It's utopian, right? It's not incremental. It's utopian.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
so here's the thing.
And then he got a
I
socialist as his president. So suck it, Dan. I won. Up yours.
I think you're right that we're like you shouldn't relent on the liberal um you know the I'm trying to come up with exactly the right word, but like don't stop beating the libs. And I'm not just saying like, oh, her libtard, but like, you know,
No, no, they're
uh
dangerous.
Carl Benjamin is right. There are some serious false assumptions encoded into this, and you started thinking too hard about shit, but because you're off base from jump, your results are going to be disastrous. Um, either accept like the Anglo-Saxon, don't think about it too hard, or our next major challenge, like because a defeat of liberalism will also be a defeat of libertarianism, just out of hand.
Right.
I think the struggle for us actually is is creating a coherent post-liberal, like, okay, we really like some of the outcomes of liberalism, um and some of the ways of being in community relations that came down to us from liberalism, but we essentially want to reverse engineer those without systemic failures,
Yeah, it's
or
Americanism.
less systemic failures.
Yeah,
So if you're in the thinking too hard about it, it's actually constructing a coherent post-liberal understanding.
and
And
that's
this is
yeah.
part of why I say like our strong constituency of anti-institutionalists is a little bit hard right now.
Well, the thing is, I don't know if we need to have institutions had a certain function, right? And first off, I'd say that the Americanism is the post liberal construction of taking everything that was good about it and rejecting
Mhm.
those things that were bad. Um, the thinking about it too much. I mean, the philosophers and everything can make all these derivations they want, logical derivations, but I think just a lot of it was off base, and you get this gigantic package, this subprime philosophy called liberalism, and we picked out what we wanted, and I think the founding fathers picked out what was good and made sense, and whatever some French philosopher Derrida or whoever Foucault thought, I really couldn't. I don't know, and I don't care, which is truly the
Yeah.
most American thing to say. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't have to.
No, yeah,
Those aren't. Yeah,
they thought too hard about our shit. Our founders were like engaged in, dealing with a relatively wild frontier, and
yeah.
also there were too many of them, and like too variant in their cultural expressions to develop like ironclad axiomatic stuff other than like, work it out. All of us kind of agree in working it out because we're still like Anglo-Saxon, even though we have like massive metaphysical disagreements.
Right, and the the framework that we end up getting out of liberalism is more or less just the rights that we then need to defend using. When I say defend, I also mean like regulate. Like our rights are regulated; they're made regular. We have a regular freedom of speech.
Mhm.
We have a regulated freedom of assembly, right? Those things, and we had this sort of Cicero derived government system that helped keep things in check, so that way things don't move so fast. Which, by the way, I always get really frustrated by people who are upset that things aren't moving as fast as they want. It's like, it's slow for a reason, guys. Like, it's slow for a
Mhm.
reason. It's supposed to take a hot minute. It should, like, if you
Yeah.
want, and it was like, it's 3 months into the administration, you're wanting him to undo shit that was done for like 50 years ago. I was like, it's not going to happen, guys. You gotta calm down, calm down. Just wait.
Well,
Are you
also
seeing
the
progress? You know?
technological pace of progress has been like instant gratification, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
being able to move places so quickly and stuff like that. And like, president gets elected. Yeah, I want this and this and this. And like like a month later, it hasn't happened. And it's like, bro, it's only been a month. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Give it a rest. Yeah. That's
doing
exactly.
posting shit doesn't take time. Doing shit takes time.
Yeah. I'd see people wanting arrests like within the first month. I was like, do you have any idea how long it takes to put a case together? It takes years
Yeah.
to put like a
Yeah,
high profile
exactly.
case.
Exactly.
Like the FBI will follow a mobster around for years to build a case. Anyways, yeah, we're, by the way, we're way over time, but I don't know. Is there anything else that we want to say about Americanism? What it is? So it's a bit of a post-liberal construction of experientially and incrementally derived axioms that seem to work. It doesn't have a full description yet. If someone wanted to define Americanism and actually write a book on it, that'd probably be all right.
I mean, I think you're actually that's interesting. I think you might be kind of right there that Americanism is, in its own sense, post-liberal,
No, it is
like
absolutely post-liberal. Yeah,
from
yeah.
jump.
Like right now, we're like with the border crisis and with the border crisis, with the personal identity and politics and stuff like that, with the different like limits on your freedoms of this and that. Like the constant debate is fairly post-liberal, I think. In other words, we're fighting back on lots of freedoms that were granted way too
Hmm.
fast. Um,
Hmm.
so, ironically, it was the incrementalism before that was keeping us kind of liberal and keeping it
Hmm.
also functional. And now it's not functional. So now it's no longer can be liberal. Which
Yeah.
we're still going to keep the incrementalism, I think. I think we're the amount of internal debate on the right is great.
Hmm.
Like someone said in the chat, like too many Pakistanis. I was like, we're now openly discussing having just full on country bans. Well,
Hmm.
that's interesting. That's not very liberal of us, is it? Um, not you can't really accuse our liberalism of being blank slate if it's this way. And I just think that we've deviated so much from what conservatism was and what liberalism was, that it has to be something different now. And conservatism is almost all cultural now, other than the
Yeah.
fact that we're incrementalists. That's the only thing conservative
Yeah.
about us.
Yeah. I mean, baseline, just a descriptive definition, and I don't know, like, I will say straight up that no party matches this definition, but as a disposition, conservatism is future oriented evolutionary thinking.
Yeah, very evolutionary, very Darwinian. I actually knew it was going to come up, so it's one of the tags in this YouTube video, this stream. Um, it's absolutely Darwinian, and I like it that way. I like a certain amount of conflict.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah, and conflict among ideas is great because you can kill lots of those motherfuckers and
yeah,
realize some serious positive advantage with very little real bloodshed.
we have the right doesn't really cancel so much as they become very bored with this person and they discard
Yeah.
them. We don't like go after their funding sources or anything. We don't. We the only thing, it's not canceling if you just stop listening to them. just
Hmm.
that just
Hmm.
means I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So like right wing doesn't really do a ton of cancel culture, but we do also encourage other people to not listen as well. So like when there's
Yeah.
that one former e-girl, e-thought, that was going to go to Turning Point USA and speak about the dangers of being an e-thought, but she was still doing e-thought stuff that was uncovered.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. It's
yeah, get out.
yeah.
You're
Yeah. It's more like,
quality
bro,
control.
I'm bored with this. Like, what are you talking about? It's so interesting. Like, think about it like this. Like, oh yeah, I'm bored too.
Yes, exactly. We all just decide everyone is. Uh, All right, I'm just gonna respond to a chat in here, but yeah, I'm pretty much good with that. I think it's an interesting
Yeah.
thing. Americanism is. I just want to emphasize that Americanism is neither liberal or conservative, and people are going to continue to be blindsided if they think that the new Americanism is going to act liberal or conservative, because it isn't.
Yeah, I think that's right as well. And I was very interested because I had some thoughts on like the topic brief you sent me here. And I think I said to you, like, I have my own ideas about this, but I'm curious to see where you take it. And I think you've won me over on that, that
Oh, good.
Americanism is actually kind of its own other thing.
It
Like,
is
yeah,
a. It is a.
Brits don't
Yeah.
reach over here too hard for like, some of our philosophy, because you may find that it's not really a fit.
No, and America will never have a contiguous history. We are going to like every century, America will look back and be like, I don't recognize those people. Like that's not
Yeah.
me. Like I don't
No,
look
yeah,
back
yeah.
at the Civil War people and be like, oh, that's totally me. No, almost no Americans do.
Well, it's also so geographically variable, like with the exception of some, very distinct states like Texas or California. Um, many Western states, particularly like mountain Midwestern states, are like they're not really states. They're kind of like fake countries
Oh
versus
yeah, yeah,
almost all the East Coast states are actual real like mini countries and coalitions. Things like Arizona and New Mexico are like pretty fake.
yes, and
They're
that's
much
and
more they much more resemble like Arizona much more resembles an administrative region, whereas Virginia resembles a country that's in a coalition.
right. And here's what the foreigners are gonna get. Oh, by the way, you ever seen that meme? And it's pictured in there like a brown guy, which okay, fine, he's brown, that's fine. That's pretty accurate. And he says, "Let me tell you about your country and how I fit into it," or something like that.
Mhm.
I want to.
Oh yeah.
I need to find that meme, and I just need to put like a British, like make him white and British person. It's like, shut the. I like British. You could shut the f up about how America works. Some places have no history or culture. That's fine. Like they're making their own. It's called a baby. It can't walk yet, but it doesn't mean it's not a human being. Or it's like, oh, this isn't a country. That place isn't real. Because I'll hear that. It's like, oh, this isn't a real place. I was like, yeah, it's a real. They have their own culture and it's emerging, right? And you know what? As soon as they get some culture, it's going to be another 2 generations past, and that culture's gone. They're going to have a new one. Like America is this weird thing where it's sort of this baby that never grows up. And certain areas, the problem is the places that do grow up tend to grow into horribly ugly things. Like New England
Yeah.
and California are the ugliest things in this nation, in my mind, right? Like it's fun to go
I
visit there, but they're the source of a lot of our problems. It's poison. So I wonder if Europe is Europe just California and New England? Are they having the same problems? Should they be
maybe.
constantly reborn too?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more generous to New England than I am to
Oh,
California.
yes, you should be. New England is actually fun. Somewhat. New England
New
externalizes
New
all of its
England is
problems.
like
Yeah, New England exports its problems. California is like they the only thing they make domestically is problems, and they consume them domestically. Whereas New England
yeah.
is like, let's put the bullshit elsewhere.
Well, New England is also like the most culturally different, like constituent American founding stock. Like
Yeah, yeah.
they they're almost like yeah, we're all part of an over tribe. I'm kind of fine with New England being like a localized country within a country, like the New England autonomous zone, sort of.
Yeah, they're fine as long as they.
It's almost like a reservation or something. Like this is the
Well, yeah, yeah.
Yankeedom, the Yankeedom preserve where we let like free range Yankees and New Englanders do their thing.
I I wanted to, before we go, because we got to go. We're already over a bunch, and you and I will talk a little bit after this too. I want to
Yeah.
say our next. What do you think about this next topic? Is America an empire or a nation? Because this triggers the hell out of
Ooh.
people. Because that is a big debate. Is America actually a nation, or is it an
I would
empire?
I would have to do some reading to have a qualified opinion on that.
If you want to make
I
it like
mean,
a while from now or something like that, so there's lots of time, but whenever you want to do
yeah.
it, that's something that's I've been interested in a while because by my estimation, we became an empire at the Civil War when it was no longer optional to be here. You are now a prisoner of this overarching thing, and you have to be in here. And even though, and you do get a say, like the imperial constituents do get a say, but it's
Mhm.
not, they don't have autonomy.
Yeah, I think that break point is accurate. Just the rest, and I mean, I think that that delineating point is accurate. For me, it's just like I'm rough on the rest of specifically American imperial history, i.e., principally not homeland history, like the history in the territories or acquisitions and stuff.
I actually, yeah. For me, my scope is actually limited just the contiguous United States and then Alaska and Hawaii. I'm not even
Okay.
talking about
I
Guam or
mean, yeah,
anything
yeah.
like that.
If
Yeah,
we're imperialistic at home, yeah, sure. That one's much easier to talk about.
yeah, exactly. Like I think yeah. All right, so maybe we'll make that a topic for another time. Because right now people are thinking, is America a nation? And I have to break it. I wish it was. I'd have to break it to them. No, it's an economic zone. It's a free for all. So get
The
yours, get your bag, and get ready.
that was one I heard you solo vamp about that I had some commentary on, but it deviated from the main topic. So maybe we can
Sure.
get into that on the
Let's
next
get
one
into it.
too.
Yeah. All right.
On economic zones. And there's an
Economics.
ancient
Yes,
distinction called
absolutely.
and there's an ancient distinction called free cities. I think America just needs
That's
to
too funny.
acknowledge that we have free cities.
That'd be fun. Let's talk about that. Anyone who's still watching, anybody who knows who Stelios was it Pentaglios?
Uh Panagiatu, I know I'm saying that
Oh my
like
god,
wrong
he's gonna
and too
kill me.
slow.
Don't watch this Stelios. I shouldn't even have tried. No. All right. Well,
Well,
anyways,
he's Greek John Smith.
yeah. All right. Oh, does he have his own? He has his own Wikipedia page. Wait, no, that's a different. No, I'm sorry, that's a footballer. That's a footballer.
Yeah, like I said, Greek John Smith.
There we go. Okay. We're gonna have Stelios on. I'm gonna try to get all three of us on here. But we had so many technical difficulties this time. We'll make it
Well,
happen.
hopefully Google Cloud is not
Oh
an
my
absolute
gosh.
dumpster fire in a couple of weeks.
At the worst case scenario, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make the Google Meet the full screen, and that's just gonna be it. And it's just gonna be a recording of the Google Meet because that's essentially what we did this time. Yeah. Oh, Panagiatu. Panagiatu. I'll have to put that into pronunciation thing. I had no chance. It was like sending me into the meat grinder. All right, we're gonna have him on, and we're gonna talk about a lot of different things. One of my little bailiwicks is I love talking about the philosophy and politics of family. I have a video coming out pretty soon about how to effectively argue with your wife. Spoilers: it's not an argument. You are helping generate a narrative. You are doing theater. Women think in narratives, and you need to have an arc. If you go straight to the solution, she won't believe you. Anyways, it'll be good. It'll be fun. All right. I'm going to stop the stream and see if OBS kirks out on me or not. All right.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you
Maybe.
guys for watching. Hit like if you're still here.